Welcome to Season 7 of True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. Real talk with those who pledge to keep us safe with grit, sacrifice and determination. Let's get on with the show. This episode of True Blue Conversations is proudly brought to you by Loudon Private Wealth, the team trusted by professionals, veterans and families across Australia to build real long-term financial security. If you want to take control of your finances, protect your future and build real generational wealth, Loudon Private Wealth are the people you want in your corner. They don't do gimmicks, they don't do hype, just smart strategy and honest advice coupled with real-world experience. Check out the links in the description to contact Warren and the team via loudonpw.com.au or 02 8313 0418. Now let's get back to the show. This episode of True Blue Conversations was brought to you by Dead Reckoning Rum, creating individual rum releases commemorating the diggers lost in Afghanistan, proudly supporting veterans, donating 50% of all their profits to veterans organisations around Australia. Look up Dead Reckoning Rum, buy some bottles, connect via Instagram and Facebook and give them your support. Now, let's get back to the show.
G'day, welcome back to True Blue. Today I'm coming to you live from Brisbane and I've got a very special guest. We've been putting this podcast together for a while now and it's worth the wait and it's been this guest that I've got on has had a very distinguished career and in the Queensland Police, serving for 33 years and has now transitioned, still serving, but in a civilian space now, working in defence, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But what a story this guest has, and I'm joined in his home, and it's an absolute privilege to be in his home. And when you hear his story, and you'll understand why I got him on. So, Brendan Haley, BM, you were awarded the Bravery Medal, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. Welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here.
Mate, before we get into your career, and obviously I mentioned the Bravery Medal that you were awarded, mate, let's go back to a young Brendan. Tell me life growing up as a young fella. What were you like at school? Do you have any brothers and sisters? And what were you like at sport?
Wow, that's going to go back. Yeah, so Queensland born and raised, country boy. So mum and dad were both teachers with the state government, and I'm the eldest of two. I've got a younger sister. So I was born in a little country town of Monto, a population of about 4,000 people. Mum and dad had met there as teachers. That was their first teaching posts. So we were there for, I think, about the first 18 months of my life. And then we moved to Bundaberg. And it was during that period of time where once my mother had got married, she couldn't teach, you know.
Yeah,
so
the old,
government legislation in Queensland. So Dad he got a transfer to Bundaberg, and that's where I'd spent most of my childhood. My primary school was there, and during those sort of years in the mid-70s, it's like forever. So in the mid-70s, my sister was born there in Bundaberg, and we lived out amongst the cane fields. Bundaberg, being a major regional centre, for Queensland, with one hill. You can see it's in between the beaches, a 10-minute drive one way and 10 minutes into the city heart of Bundy. So grew up on this isolated hill, and I guess looking back now, very fortunate that I grew up in that period where my parents sort of entrusted you to be able to look after yourself and make decisions and learn from that. So that's where you would go out into the cane fields. You'd play there amongst the snakes with your neighbouring your friends. Get out, the sun's up, go and do your stuff, come back when the sun's down, have dinner. Some parent would scream at you and you'd all run out of the bush to come and have your lunch. So, you had to learn how to problem solve, and you had to learn how to look after each other, and you'd learn to look after the smaller kids there, and you'd make mistakes. You'd fall out of trees. You'd ride bikes too fast.
Yeah.
There's no helmets. If you fell over and broke something, it was just a slow limp back home, and maybe, if it was really broken, you might see a doctor. Otherwise, you just get patched up and get told to go back outside. So I was quite fortunate. I think that brought some resilience and some problem solving and a desire to help look after people that were younger or weren't, were challenged. Maybe they weren't as smart as I was, or maybe that they didn't have the opportunities that I did. In fact, our neighbour in Bundaberg, they had a intellectually disabled adult son, and even though I was 8 or 9 years of age, I'd go over and play toy soldiers with him because he had this massive collection of small miniature figures, and he had an intellectual age of maybe 10 or 11, and communication wasn't easy, but even then I could recognise that he was just happy to have someone to share that with, and that was, I guess, the start of my interest in military type history and stuff like that. And growing up away from my grandparents in Bundaberg, we were isolated. My family was just mum, dad, and my sister and I. And mum and dad had picked some good friends, and on this particular hill was an ex-light horseman from World War One, and Jack and his wife Betty were formative, I guess, because on weekends that's who would look after me. I could go down there, and I probably traumatised him with my toy soldiers, but he would sit there and play with me, and I didn't realise at the time, the young man on horseback in front of the pyramids was someone who was an Australian legend.
Yeah. Did he tell you anything and open up?
He would talk to me through the toys, and discuss things, and, beyond just the looking at, like, say, little tactics, when we're setting stuff up, he would explain, and then the ideologies behind stuff, or what people were like, And it was interesting when his actual grandkids would turn up. I'd sort of get my nose out of joint a bit, going, well, who are you? That's like my grandparent. Yeah. You're some stranger, whereas I'm here every weekend. So, I think I'd had some good role models sort of growing up, and then exposed to, things that would later form, I guess, my career choices, and understanding that, people are different, but it doesn't mean that they're not good people, or they have their own abilities or capabilities, and they'll bring out something in you, but you can bring out something in them. Did
you find back then too that, like, fast forward to 2025, judgment now it's in everything we do, and people judge on social media how people look, how people talk, how they walk, what they're interested in. Back then, did you feel it wasn't as present back then?
I think you could have a break from it too, and because judgment was probably there, but fewer people were game enough to say something directly to your face. And if they did, invariably it wasn't to be mean, they just didn't know any better, or it would just come out, and there was a learning lesson from them, because they would physically see, oh, my words has had a direct effect negatively on this person, and perhaps that should be avoided. Or perhaps that should be kept, your opinion, behind closed doors. Whereas I think now it's too easy for people to be brave keyboard warriors and just fire something off without the empathy as well, going, well, why does that person think that? Or was that person having a bad day? Or were they just frustrated?
And there's no accountability now. No. You can sit there and type away, and there's no thought to what your words would do to that individual. As back then it was, you said it to them, it was in their face. Like you were there. There
was a consequence. So even 100%. As a child, like, if you'd said something about another kid at school, they were going to find out, but they were going to come to your face.
That's right.
But there was also that break, that once you were home, like, it wasn't like you had social media that you logged on and everyone could find you. Like, maybe if you had a publicly listed phone number, your parents did, maybe you'd get some sort of phone call. But that was, like, so rare, it wasn't really a thing. because most people could just see you the next day.
Yeah. I was the last of that generation. Like, I know what you're talking about with growing up of, you're out till the street lights were on. You make sure that you were home for dinner when the street lights. You were out at 9 o'clock. You were building dirt jumps. You were building cubbies. You were doing all those sort of things. Like the late 90s. That all sort of like 90s 2000s stopped, and now kids today go, oh, I'm catching up with my friends, and you go, but you're at home, and they're like, yeah, we're having a LAN party. Like and that's the thing now. It's like, hang on, like when you and I were kids, it was you'd go to a mate's place, you'd have your bike out the front, and that was how you knew everyone was. Yeah,
and I mean that continued, into my high school. Is that you might have a friend come over, you jump on some bikes, you'd have to ride to a store if you wanted to play video games. I had one friend who had an Atari.
Now you're going back, yeah.
That's great, but I only had one friend that had an Atari. The rest of us would have to go and get you 20 cents, or if it was a really expensive game, 50 cents.
Yep.
And you're only there for as long as your money held out.
That's right.
So it wasn't going to be an all-day event.
That's right.
You had to be able to amuse yourself, and you couldn't rely on someone else to provide your entertainment.
You had to
go and find it.
Kids these days go, I'm bored, and you're like, how can you be bored?
I think learning how to be bored and deal with it and manage it in certain professions, particularly the hurry up and wait professions, is essential for you to be able to do it long term. Because if you're looking for instant gratification, it's not going to come.
Exactly.
There's plenty of times, if we, later when we look at my career, where you'd arrive at work thinking you're going to do something. No, you're off to a murder scene. You're a crime scene guard. You're going to be there for 6 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
That's right.
You've got to keep an awareness. You've got to keep a perimeter. There's no one else that's going to be coming talking to you. In fact, you may not even have your partner with you. They may have to be on the other side of the house, so that you've got two people trying to do a cordon. So you had to learn to be able to just be in your head and deal with that type of stuff. And
it's interesting that and we'll touch on joining the police in a minute, but that's a valid point that you touch on. Is I think people are scared to be in their own heads, and what's going through your head these days. It's and like a lot of people go, no, I need to be around someone. I can't be on my own. So it's very valid that you touch on that. Yeah, that is something that people do struggle with. Yeah,
I think like my dad was able to role model that. Like Dad was a math science teacher. Went to uni, got that. Became a librarian because there was job opportunities in Education Queensland for that. But once we'd moved from Bundaberg to Kingaroy, it was my parents felt that a balanced education was important. So Dad would drive us to music lessons and then sit in the car for an hour. Or if Mum wanted to go to the shops, Dad would just aimlessly follow behind for an hour. But he was capable of doing that because he'd had a similar upbringing where he grew up in Brisbane. You wanted to go and do tennis lessons. Yep, okay, here's your money for the tram. Go from Annerley, go and take your hour trip to Milton, and then walk back by yourself from Milton.
That's right.
So the tram money that you were going to spend then can go to buying a drink and ice cream and walk back to Annerley. An hour and a half walk.
Yep.
So, I think having him like that and Mum being raised by, being adopted as a baby and raised by a single woman, they were resilient people. They learnt that you had to be by yourself at times and it's okay. And then they instilled that on my sister and I.
Yeah. And how were you at school? Were you academic? Like, I think most veterans and first responders I've had on always says, report, could do better if paid attention. Like, how were you at school? Were you a scholar?
Look, I was probably quite fortunate in that I'd always been a good student. A's and B's, quite normal for me. Very good at English, history, literature, those type of things. Maths was never my strong point, remains not a strong point now, which frustrates my father, being maths and science based. But like, for example, they wanted me to go to university, from high school. So they threw me into what we call Maths 1, Maths A, Maths B, Maths 1, Maths 2.
Yep.
And dismal failure, Ds. Following year, go into what they call veggie maths, maths and society, which is general maths. Yep, A+. Because I could just understand it.
Yep.
Physics and chemistry, failed. Biology, I understand.
Yep.
A+. So I did very well once I got the subjects that were best suited to my capabilities sorted out. And we moved around a bit as kids. So we did my primary school in Bundaberg. 12 months we did in Kingaroy, another little country town.
Yeah.
Where,
we passed it yesterday.
and Dad was just told by the education department, sell your house. You're moving to Kingaroy.
Wow.
We were there for 12 months, and then a new school was opening in Mackay, where Mum grew up, and so that was it. Year 9 through to Year 12 is now in Mackay. So, it's constantly, moving through childhood, but learnt how to make new connections. And so moving to new places was, there were skills that came with being able to do that successfully. And, I guess that kind of, again, there were skills that I learnt there that I could continue through my life, where you could just rock up somewhere, make a connection with some people, and then sort of start a new life again, or be aware of other people, and other people always have interesting stories.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, and so the high school went through, and then, my score was good enough that I could start a law degree, but it just wasn't for me at that stage.
So, did you have any family members that had served in either the defence or emergency services, or were you the first?
So, Dad's side, Uncle Owen Cusack, was a World War II veteran who won the military medal.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So Uncle Owen was a very big personality in the family, Dad's favourite uncle. I remember him just as this sort of diminutive little figure who was, a big personality, but a little tiny person. And, he'd served in World War II, but then continued and was in Vietnam as one of the military advisors.
Yeah, right.
And stayed in the reserves and stuff like that. So, everyone in the family is very proud of Uncle Owen and the military medal. But, other than that, everyone else had kind of worked for government in some form of qualifications, so they'd all gone to uni, they'd all engineers or like teachers and stuff like that. So, no, when it came to emergency services, I guess I was the first, and, Mum and Dad thought cadets was important for me. So, in Mackay, joined the Naval Cadets, which, was most of the guys there were around that Vietnam vet type era. So that was a sudden big shock, a new type of organisation, using the old SLR rifles and drilling and learning how to, use sailboats and stuff. So that was good, and I kind of enjoyed those sort of tests and building, I guess, on my interest in history and the military. So, and I'd sit with my mother. We were very structured with our education. So, like I said, music, you will do some sport. We will try you at soccer. The family's really good at tennis. We'll try you at tennis. Here's some martial arts. So cadets was one thing, had to learn how to play a musical instrument. Okay, well that was sort of one thing. But I would sit and watch TV. I was only allowed to watch the ABC, and they had The Bill on.
Yes,
So I remember being there for the first episode of The Bill, and I would watch that religiously with my mother. I forget if it was a Thursday night, maybe a Saturday night. But when it was on, we would sit. I could have a break from doing homework. I could sit and watch all of that episode. And I remember maybe 12 months into watching that, one time my mum goes, I don't know why anyone would want to be a police officer. The things that these poor people have to do. And me, it was the other way, going, actually, this seems like a really good career.
Yeah.
So when I started a law degree, went up to Townsville, and 6 months in, I knew, you know what, I understand law. I don't like the teaching, the ethics behind it. It wasn't about, the right and the wrong. It was about the gathering of evidence and how to have it removed. And I was thinking, that's just not for me.
Yeah.
I believe in, justice and stuff like that. So I secretly applied to the Queensland Police at that stage. And I'd always been fascinated with the French Foreign Legion. So I'd actually written a letter to the Foreign Legion that were then currently deployed out at New Caledonia, looking at what's the recruitment stuff for you guys, Because there was no internet, like you had to physically write a letter, put a stamp on, send it somewhere.
Yep.
And very quickly QPS got back to me. And because I was at university, at that stage, they were just transitioning from cadets and probationaries to wanting a better, as a result of the Fitzgerald inquiry, wanting a higher level of educated people coming in. And so, within like a week and a half, I suddenly got this letter back saying, hey, interested. And you go, wow, okay.
Were you close to, because of your grandfather, were you close to joining the military, or was it always that willingness to, like, obviously, you watch the Bill, mate. Like I watched that as a kid. I loved the Bill myself, and it was tragic when they finished that show in 2010. And I grew up on the Bill. I used to watch it religiously, the 2 times a week. That was what I did as well. But were you ever swayed that you did the cadets? Were you close to joining the military, or
I would have gone either way.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated with the history and TV shows like Bojest and stuff. And rather than looking at the Australian Army, I was interested in that, a mythical group and something that would take me again and really challenge me in my life, and like if I'm going to go and try and do something completely different. And because I was quite self-resilient, and that's why I was in Townsville and my parents were still in Mackay and didn't have any family up there, I wasn't scared of taking a risk.
Yeah.
So, like, in some ways I wonder what my life would have been if they'd written back to me and said, get your passport and fly to New Caledonia and you'll be recruited. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, I'd always liked to have served. I wish, I had done that. My eldest son, that was one of our voices of encouragement for him, is that, yes, you might want to go and serve in, the police or something, the firefighters or whatever, but go to defence first. Do something you can't do in civilian life. Drive big vehicles and blow stuff up.
Yeah.
You can't do it in civilian life. Go, serve,
well, you can.
see the world.
You might get arrested.
Well, that's right. Yeah. You might see us in a different perspective.
That's right.
But go, see the world.
Yeah.
Go on the government's dime.
And get paid to do it.
Yeah. Have a bit of adventure. I think that's one of the reasons people go to those sort of careers.
Yeah, definitely.
And then later on, if you want to take that step back and settle down into a longer term profession, then come back, and that's what he's sort of done.
So you joined, mate, in 1991. So talk me through the process of Queensland Police back then, and the wokeness that doesn't exist that we are in 2025. Which I mentioned at the start. You served for 33 years. How policing changed over that 30, which we're going to get into later on down the track. But back then, what was it like? You wrote to them, and then that was the
letter came back.
Yeah, right.
And then it was a process of the fitness tests, a written test. So I think the university semesters were ending, and I was going to go back to Mackay to see mum and dad. So they've gone, hey, we were recruiting in Mackay. So rock up to a school, bring your running shoes. You're going to do a few laps here. And that was fine, because once I'd known I was suitable, I'd started, running 2.4K in the middle of the day in Townsville.
That's a good
because if I could do that, then I knew, well, if I get to Brisbane, it's probably going to be cooler. If I get to Mackay, if I can run at 35 degrees in the time that you want of 11 minutes, then I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I was training in the university gym then. There was no air conditioning. They were like brick walls and dodgy old equipment. That's what you did. You did it at 34 degrees, 35 degrees. So went to Mackay and did that. You do your psychometric tests and your maths and all those sorts of things. And then within a couple of weeks, you were called up for a face-to-face interview on a panel. I'm pretty sure there were 3 people on the panel. Yeah, and it was the usual sort of questions, you know. It was like the questions in the written stuff, you know. Do you like a well-manufactured gun or a poem? And you go, well, I'm not sure what you really want. Like a poem can be a really nice thing, but the firearm in itself has an element of beauty and, you know, human ingenuity. So, you know, like they're strange things.
Strange question to ask.
Strange questions, yeah. So the panel was a bit like that too, but it was always, you know, like, well, why do you want to join the police? Well, you know, I want something that's got a bit of adventure and I want to help people, you know, and I'd seen that it's not all going to be joyful, you know, and there's going to be some mundane moments, which I think is kind of lacking now with some people who join the job. I think there's, you know, that they're told that, you know, we don't do boring, you know, as an ad campaign, and you go, well, no, we excel at boring because there's plenty of boring.
Oh, yeah.
But there's going to be 5 minutes of terror. And there's probably, you know, another 5% of terror when you're in court, because everyone's going to criticise everything that you've ever possibly done. And it doesn't matter what the actual person's done, it's what have you done.
Yeah.
You're going to be interrogated. You're not going to be interrogating anyone because that will get the interview thrown out. But you can be interrogated as a witness. So, you know, I can see that's why they've, you know, the resilience that some of the new recruits they're coming through kind of lacks. Whereas for me, you know, I'd grown up being resilient and take some challenges and you own your mistakes. Yeah. You know.
That's missing today.
Yeah.
Accountability is a big thing that people just don't seem to take accountability these days. Leaders, you know, we were speaking off it.
Yeah.
That seems to be lacking now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So obviously I passed everything.
Yeah.
And then got told, come February, you're down to Brisbane. Training will be almost, I think it's 11 months. So it was February. Half of that, and once I got in, I've gone, great, this is excellent, you know, because there was the probationaries, and then I knew there was this new uni thing coming in, but I was hoping I could avoid that and just go through as a probationary, because I've been at uni and didn't like it. No. Congratulations, Brendan, you're one of the first 400 that will be going to university for half of the time, and then police training at the other half.
Oh, no.
So, anyway, you know. It was what it was, so I arrived out at the academy, and then lo and behold, the first person I meet in the academy is one of my friends from uni.
Oh, right.
Who knew that I was applying, but he never told me he did, and so...
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he'd applied, and next thing you know, the two of us went through together.
And was it a big class? That was a big intake?
Yeah, there was 400, and I think it was about 50% of us were under 20.
Wow.
From memory, it was something ridiculously high. And so a lot of us, like me, I didn't own a car. You lived out at Oxley.
Yep.
And that was it for 11 months, you know.
Right.
So it would, a massive population in the academy during the week, and then everyone that owned a car would disappear, and there'd be like 10 of us or 11 of us.
Yeah, okay.
So, and because we were, you know, so young, the kitchen staff on weekends would cook like there were twice the number of us, and they kind of mothered us, because most of them were mothers whose kids were in the police, and that's how they ended up at those sort of jobs. So, I got fond memories of it. Going to QUT for the first part was pretty tough, because we didn't look like normal uni students, and... You know, you get told things like, you're responsible for racial genocide in Australia, and I've gone, I don't understand, man. You know, like, what are you talking about? I grew up with a lot of my friends in Bundaberg and Mackay were from the old Kanaka families, you know. I didn't see colour. It didn't mean anything to me, you know. So, you know, you're kind of confronted with stuff like that.
And were you, back then... Were you taken to the morgue and shown a dead body, or did that change?
Yeah, no. So the old morgue that used to be in the city on the river, I think it was built in the 1930s from memory. Yeah, you were taken there. and you'd see an autopsy performed, and there was like no separate air conditioning systems. It was like one big air conditioning system, so you got to smell everything, and it was really visceral, right there.
Yeah. Were you okay? Like, you were okay with that, or?
Yeah, I guess because you knew that you joined this job and there was going to be some horrible stuff, and it just happened to be there's your first horrible thing.
Yeah.
To be honest, and it is confronting. Like you're watching like a spindly old person with bolt cutters opening up a human being and seeing what a non-functioning body looks like.
Yeah.
It will traumatise you a little bit, but I guess because there were other people with you and you can talk about it afterwards, it helped build that resilience again. So, and you weren't escaping it, and it was done in a clinical nature, it was like a small surgical room, so as opposed to some sort of stainless steel prison type thing. Yeah.
And that would have changed now. Like, I know that, it's changed a lot. And do you think now, like from when you were exposed to it to now, it sort of gave you a bit more of like the recruits coming out today, they're on the job. Like if they see their first dead body is when they're on the streets, as you were exposed to that beforehand.
Yep.
Do you feel that it was better then? Or?
Yeah, I think it was better. I mean, look, I was 18 when I was seeing that. And I've discussed this with family and friends, is that we shelter everyone in society from anything that's horrible because it might traumatise them. Like children, don't take your child to a funeral. And, whereas, and I think that therefore there's this unrealistic expectation that you'll never see those type of things, or it's someone else that needs to, or we don't talk about it, like we'll find some other language about it. Whereas, at 18, you go, this is your job, you're going to be told where to go, you're not really going to have a say, and you're going to have to investigate death. This is death.
Yeah.
You need to be able to deal with this. Whereas, now, you go to the morgue and, the separate air conditioning units, for every autopsy when I started, if you took a body into the morgue and the next day to identify it for the pathologist, you had to come back and you had to say, that's my body. There was no photographic handover. It was, and so I remember, once I graduated, one of my first dead bodies, we discovered him at 11 p.m. We're supposed to finish at midnight, didn't finish till 1 a.m., taking the body in there, lodged it, gone home. I was going to get 4 hours sleep, and I'd sort of said to the girlfriend at the time, can you just wake me up at 6 a.m. because I've got to get back to Oxley by 7:30 so I can jump in the car, drive straight into the city and be there for 8:30 to tell the pathologist that's the dead body that I brought in here at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. None of this 10-hour break. Yeah, so look, I think we've tried to now make it so clinical that, we don't want to expose the junior members to it because we recognise, the police recognise now, within 3.5 years you're going to have post-traumatic stress. But it's under-preparing them for the first time that you're going to see pieces of a human. And they don't impress on, and this is what, when I was training people, is that probably the most sacred task you'll ever get as a police officer is the investigation of the death of another human. That will mean that you will have to touch them and examine them and get in close. Because it doesn't matter the state of decomposition or how long, it's been there or the nature of the death, you need to be satisfied that it is either a non-suspicious death or it is a suspicious death.
Yep.
Because, as humans, the sanctity of human life is the principle that we're all raised on. So, unfortunately, though, that means it's going to be down and grimy and dirty, and you need to get your gloves on and go and examine it.
Yeah.
And I think that is, something that's been lacking. They don't teach it at the academy. There's an expectation it'll be taught on the road, but, the police that were trained in the old ways leaving or gone.
Yeah.
And you've got puppies training puppies in a lot of ways. So,
and I was just about to highlight, that puts a lot of pressure on the senior, like yourself and many others who have been in the job 10, 12, 20, years. That's a lot of pressure to then, that they should learn these skills at the academy.
Yeah.
To then put onto you guys as the field training officers out in the field, and it's sometimes like you talk about TOs that they make or break a career, don't they? Like if you've got a lazy one,
yes,
that police officer
it can kill enthusiasm.
Exactly.
Because most people join, they're enthusiastic. I mean, getting back to the academy, like we were there for 11 months.
Yeah.
The first part was like 3 days, I think, was at QUT, and then 2 doing police training each week back at the academy. But after the 6 months, then you were always at the academy, and they gave plenty of time to develop, whereas now the times keep getting shorter and punching the numbers through. And I think that's a detriment. And a good training officer, is essential because, yes, they haven't had the time, they've barely got an understanding of legislation. Any decision that you make, you're going to be sitting in front of a learned colleague for hours criticising everything, and no one expects you to be a walking encyclopedia of legislation. But you need to know, and this is what I try and say to people, know your absolute basics. Your basics will get you out of trouble. You can use them and give yourself time to find the technical stuff later on. But you need your really basic skills. And you need to have an understanding of, there's enforcement of law or there's justice. What's naturally just? Is it naturally just in this occasion to prosecute this person? Or is a caution more appropriate, or is no action appropriate in this instance? What's the truly natural just thing? And when you try and explain that to people as part of your decision making, is look beyond just the legislation, but you need to consider, is it naturally just? Because that's part of what our role is.
Definitely.
In the discipline, internal discipline is based on this principle of natural justice. Well, then it should be applied to everything that you do outside of that job as well. Consider that.
And when you were at the academy, was there much emphasis on the shooting component, or was it briefly touched on?
It was briefly touched on. I'm trying to remember, the driving wasn't particularly long, but quite a few of us didn't have cars and barely had our license. So there was a handful that when everyone else got a week's holiday, we were basically given additional training and driving for a week, and that focused a lot on pursuit driving. So we did everyone else's emergency driving, and then we did additional driving, which certainly helped. And with the firearms, I can think we had the innovative systems there where you had a projected image, like a sort of movie screen going, and then you had to talk through what you were going to be doing and moving. And then the pistol training was still at an indoor range, which is certainly not used anymore. But it was really basic. It was, 5 or 6 shot revolver. In some ways, there were skills that are no longer taught, like, you had to go back to 15 metres and shoot from a lying position and shoot from a seated position and shoot, from up to distance of 15 metres. Whereas now, yes, the research sort of shows that most police firearm incidents are 7 to 4 metres. So that's where the focus is. Maybe they'll go back to 10 metres, but like the 15 metre mark for shooting is rarely sort of impressed upon.
Well, you look at it now, I think we were speaking off air, with what the recent events in Bondi. That was just 40 metres, lucky shot.
Oh, yeah.
And
incredible.
As you know, with the Glocks, and Glocks came in. How early in your career did it change over?
The Glocks came in when I was in Mackay, and that was in '98.
Yeah, okay. So you had the revolver for the first couple of years.
Yeah. And it was a very different style. It was a weaver stance, as opposed to the straight-on sort of technique that's now used. So you drop one leg back, blade your body, and engage with the 5 or 6 shot, and then using speed strips to reload.
Far out.
And when I graduated, all the pistols were second hand, so I got, well, a lot of them were. I got someone's 5-shot revolver, which only changed when I went to the dog squad and went to a 6-shot revolver. So the extra round, never know when it might need it.
Yeah.
But then in '98 they started implementing the Glocks, and they also went away from the M1 firearm. There was an old rifle that was used but was never taken out, really. They sat in the stations. And then in the last sort of 10 years you've had your R4 models and the Sig Sauers sort of come in.
And when you go back to the revolver, is that the same sort of accuracy distance of 20 metres like the Glock has, or is it...
Yeah, look, there's really not that much difference. It comes down to, I guess, the capability of the person and weapon control.
Yeah.
I mean, like, at least, I guess with the pistol, you can cock that hammer back, and that just gives you a little bit, additional but control, maybe. I certainly found, like, my shooting style, even when I transitioned to the Glock, was very similar to the revolver. It took, I don't know, maybe 20 years to break out of the Weaver stance because I was so drilled in it that's what I would go
Muscle
to, particularly under pressure.
Yeah.
Like if it was just on the range, that's fine, but once you started putting timers on or moving and then taking cover again, it was back into the Weaver because, and that's what I used in real life in situations where I had to draw my firearm in real life, Those fighting skills came back, and the fighting skills were those early skills that were just drilled into you.
And that's muscle memory. It's what I know myself as a firefighter. You go back to what you drill, like like the amount of times that I've over my 14 years that I've rolled and bowled hoses. It's now in the it's just, and I get in the same stance and I bowl no matter what situation it is. Same thing. It is literally going to your muscle memory.
Yeah, and I guess there's situations too that the awareness that once I was on the road. Under stress, what would my body do? And I learnt very quickly that I was a fight, not flight person.
Yep.
Be it good or bad, unfortunately, sometimes, the situation appear, I'd move in, I'd take the action, and then afterwards you go, wow, I had, auditory exclusion, the visual hone came in on the target, and I'd missed the fact that there was a guy with a rifle over here because I was focused on
tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision,
yeah.
And once I'd seen that, it wasn't like hold or dive to cover. It was go in.
Going hard.
Hard.
And did that, like I know, and, we've all been guilty of it in that tunnel vision. I remember when I, fire, I was, there's a fire, go in, and hang on, have you seen that it's right near a cliff, or have you seen the power lines? Yeah. As your career developed, and I know for me now, as you get more experience, you then actually take that broader. You can actually even in that fight, not freeze. You can actually take in the whole surroundings. Did that evolve as your career went on?
It did, and I think this is one of the things with policing that I've sort of told people is that you will continue to learn until the day you resign. There was always going to be something new. Like, you may have done a lot, but there's always some weird little quirk to it. And the more that you fail, the more that you'll do it better. And if we can practice and fail, when it does occur, it will be so smooth.
Yeah.
And that can be even down to just verbal things. So, like you go and do an RBT, there's a certain spiel that you have to throw out. But if you can practice spiels for other situations, it will slow your heart rate down. It will give a signal that the courts will be happy with later on. You'll be under the pump thinking, I'm about to get my head punched in. But if you can have the spiel where you're going, calm down, sir, I'm here to help, and you end up going hands-on, you're going, calm down, sir, I'm here to help, stop resisting. It's calming you down. The automatic spiels that's coming out when you're under high pressure and your brain's trying to switch your language off. But for particularly this era now, everyone's under so much scrutiny because everyone's filming everything that you're doing. if you can practice those spiels, they look great on the camera. It's not altered the legality of whether or not you've done something, but it's provided you with that little moments to win the fight better, articulate better what you were doing, and be able to win that, public opinion type thing.
Well, I'm going to get into marching out graduation in a sec, but you've just brought up a valid point that when you joined, there was no cameras. Now, and people, and I know especially as a kid, like if, I was always brought up with that if the police are having trouble, you get in and give them a hand, and not these days it's, let's get the phone out and we'll stand and be a by-watcher and we'll take, we'll criticise, we can get likes, look at this, the police, as when you joined, there seemed to be a willingness to, help back then, and now it's, I'll stand back because this looks good on social media.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I still, within the last 5 or 6 years when I was policing, there were still instances where you're by yourself and members of the public would come up and assist you. You're just by yourself. So there's still that there, but there's maybe fewer people would come and do it. Or they're more interested in recording and going, look at the police, they're out of control, because you've had this massive narrative. And it's so much later on, it's the police having to explain the full situation. And you've seen that with Bondi, but you saw it with a Queensland traffic officer up here, who looks like he's stopped a motorist and then just starts punching this person for no reason. And you can hear the person filming going, stop it, you bad policeman. But then when you find out, no, this is why the force was applied, closed hand tactics were applied, you go, that's completely reasonable. Yeah, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to justify.
You shouldn't have to justify it. And I think a lot of younger people are recognising that if I go and do something, someone's going to criticise. It's just easier maybe not to do something, But no, I do find that there were still plenty of people who are, and this is the problem, they're not the people you deal with most days. So a lot of police become very bitter. But there are lots of people who, in general, go, police do a tough job. They're not all bad.
Yeah.
There may be bad ones, but they're not all bad.
And I think, too, highlighting, like getting you on the podcast to show the civilian population what it's like to be a police officer, I think it's educating of, like most people's interaction with police is either a highway patrolman or they've had a domestic violence, or they've had, and police are seeing people on their worst day. That's, they're not seeing them on their best day. They're seeing them on their worst day. And, the perception is straight away, a highway patrolman is just pulled, and I'm saying that because your partner is, she's in the highway patrol, but it's, pulling poor old mum over who's, made an illegal turn or something. Yeah. That's what society, and they go, all police are, they're arseholes. Well, no, they're not all. They're not, they're ordinary people that do an extremely hard job that 90% of people won't put their hand up to do. So, and that's why it's important to get you guys on podcast to show the civilian population. This is just, what a day-to-day looks like as a police officer.
Yeah. And it does. The longer you're in it, the more times that you'll have been burnt by a member of the public, where you go out of your way to help someone and they'll stab you in the back, or they'll physically hurt you, or they'll make a complaint that will sit on your permanent record. And so, the longer you're in, the more of these sort of things where you've gone out of your way to help someone, which has just come and bitten you on the ass, the police become harder. And, that's where it's difficult, because then the person that may appreciate a warning or assistance won't get it, and then they'll just go, yeah, you're an ass. And they don't see that, all of the other 10, 15, 20 years where you've done nothing but tried to help people, and it's, you've had complaints about you. Someone had an unrealistic expectation. Well, I want you to do this. Okay, well, I'll go and tell that person they've got a right to remain silent. Why can't you just arrest him? Well, I've got no evidence, but I've got enough to interview them. well, what do you say? Well, I can't drag someone in for an interrogation.
Yeah.
He said he didn't want to be interviewed. That's it. Oh, this is ridiculous. You're not doing your job. And you go, well, I am.
Yeah.
But I've got to be fair to you and to that person.
Yeah.
You may have issue with them, but I have to, if I'm going to take him in for an interview, give him a caution first. And the first part of it says, you've got the right not to answer any questions. You're right to remain silent. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I wish to invoke that right.
That's
cool.
it.
What have I got? I don't have enough to arrest you.
That's right, and it's law. Like
it's
you're
law.
following,
I can't just
the law.
sort of bend that bit.
That's right.
That's your first bit that your learning colleague is going to look at.
That's right, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But mate, what was that like for you? You finally finished the academy. You march out. Do you get your family down to see you pass out?
Yeah.
What was that like?
They picked. I want to say there's the big entertainment centre out of Boondall. This is like the only facility that was large enough. Originally, you had a sacred acre out at Oxley, and only sworn members were allowed to step on it. But because there were so many of us, and they needed space for places to eat they dug it up, and they put gardens in. So we were absolutely detested, the 400. We were the Muppets. We were the most useless police personnel ever trained. They were told that, coming through Fitzgerald, we're going to be looking and dobbing on them, So that was kind of tough because internally there was this expectation that we were useless, and we were very young, although there'd been cadets and probationaries, like I said, 200 of us were under 20. So we hit the streets at like 19, a lot of us.
Yeah, wow.
Which now, people go, that's way too young, but it wasn't, and you learned. Yes, it was difficult going to domestics and telling people who were 20 years older than married from someone who'd not been in a relationship at that stage you need to do better.
Yeah.
But, you learnt on the job, and that's where some of having the older staff, and I remember, if you saw a senior constable, you went, wow, you've been around a long time. If you saw a sergeant, that was like a god.
Yeah.
You've done everything.
Yep.
You're old and bitter.
And probably on your third marriage.
On your third marriage. Yeah, I've always sort of said to people, I became a much better police officer after a couple of divorces, and particularly like the death of my youngest son.
Yeah.
Once I'd had those experiences, there wasn't too many people in society that I couldn't relate with in some way.
Yeah.
You had stepkids, lost stepkids, had child, lost a child, going through relationships, divorces and breakups and financial loss, man, done it a couple of times. Post-traumatic stress, what do you want to know?
Yeah.
So, I think you improve. But, coming out as a little fresh-faced 19-year-old, that was... And being thrown straight into a high work area because it works, in lower socio-economic, working-class suburbs,
Did you feel ready to go into the dangerous world of policing? And did you feel that the training was adequate for the time?
Look, I think so. Yeah. I think because we'd been there for so long and, I was indoctrinated. I lived there at the academy. My parents were 1,000 kilometres away. My grandparents were in Brisbane, but I didn't have a car. So, that was my life for 11 months, and at night you'd sit with everyone watching TV and polishing boots, So it was room inspections. My first room inspection was the night before we started.
Yeah, right.
Getting bawled out over what your room looked like. And, okay, I haven't even started day one and this is already happening. But, that's how you learn. You were resilient.
So where were you first stationed and what was your first shift, do you remember?
Yeah, the first shift I was stationed at Oxley Station, which is now where... our dog squad's kind of based out of, so and some of our other specialist teams. So, I was stationed at Oxley. We supported Anala, which was a super busy area. But in that first 12 months, you transitioned around the district. So, in the first shift, I rocked up, and I don't recall that my first year, my actual field training officer was available that day.
Right.
I think there was myself and another recruit that I went through. We were given a car and we were told to go up and down the highway and put 200k on the car. because that was one of the ways they knew whether or not in those days that you had been active in your shift. They would go through and have a look at the odometer, and if you hadn't done like 200 kilometres, well, what have you been doing all shift? You know, you should have been driving around doing stuff. And, you know, you had to have a good reason. Oh, I was at a crime scene, a house fire, whatever. Okay. But that was the first thing. Go out, be on the highway, be seen. And you have to drive up and down, you know.
Yeah, right. And 200 Ks in the Brisbane.
So, 10K and turn around, do that, and up and down the Ipswich motorway. And we didn't really know the area. But, you know, and you'd met your training off the training staff that day. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure my field training officer I only met on day 2. And he'd been in about 14, 15 months.
Wow. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so he was from a policing family, so he kind of had a good understanding of how it was. But, yeah.
And do you remember your first arrest?
You know, I was going through, and I think it was actually just like a vagrancy act.
Yeah, right.
It was just like a vagrant, at that stage, the Vagrancy, Gaming and Other Offences Act 1931, I think it was still there. But I remember my field training officer, he really, really wanted the drink drive to be the first one, but this vagrant turned up and was being a nuisance. So that was the actual first arrest.
Yeah, okay.
There's nothing so glorious. But then we'd spent, I think, the next month looking for a drink driver and never got one.
Yeah, right.
We were sitting off pubs and all sorts of things. It just didn't happen for me. Everyone else around me was getting it. But
yeah, not for you.
No.
Yeah, right.
No.
And so what are some of your day-to-day general duties that you're doing? Like what were you doing when you were stationed at your first station?
Yeah, so much of it was, I guess, a lot more dealing with actual people. So burglaries were quite common, particularly apartment blocks where they'd go through with Stilsons and do all of the garages underneath. So you'd have to take 6 reports in your notebook. There was none of this phone police link.
Yeah.
You know, if someone was burgled, you rocked up, you and your partner. And I think that was good because for a lot of people, you know, breaking into your house is probably the most traumatic thing for most people that they're going to have, outside of things like death or violent crime. But in normal, you know, that's your house is your castle. Someone's come in, violated that, taken stuff. I'd see that later in my career when we dealt with a lot of elderly people who, you know, suburbs where all the husbands had died of heart attacks in their 50s. So these elderly women in their 80s lived in big Queenslanders, were getting burgled, and you physically would see them deteriorate over the next few months and die. And so you realised how traumatic it was. So having 2 police come in, and you learnt to take it seriously. Out came a notebook. You would write in there, you know, you knew in your head there was probably not much chance, you know, it's probably not going to be fingerprints, but you had to at least instill in these people that, look, I'm here, I'm listening, and I swear to you, I want to be able to do something. So a lot of it was that the domestics were different, and they didn't seem to come in as frequent, you know, and it's probably because we didn't have things classified so much. Was classified as domestic as they are now. So, you know, the statistics are, well, this is the problem, though. You've got 6 different things that are domestics. Whereas back then, you know, like there's a dispute or whatever, you rock up. Okay, we can classify this one as domestic because there's fewer things that need to be classified as a domestic. So, and I guess there wasn't this over-reporting by the community as well, you know. And then you could successfully do things. Whereas now there is so much the influence, I guess, from community groups telling you what you should be doing instead of going, well, look, my role is law enforcement. This is it. This is what the evidence are. I'm enforcing this. Now it's all this other expectation.
Yeah.
So, you know, we did that, and then dead bodies. And I remember my first dead body was, you know, a bit of an eye-opener for me because it was a permanent caravan park, heat of summer.
Ugh.
Floods, there were flooding going on, there was big rains that Christmas. The first dead body, middle of the day, and as I'm investigating, I'm realising that the family don't want to come and ID this person because he has not been a nice person to some family members. And he's living in this squalid little caravan, and you go, but I need to get an ID. And the family going, no one's coming.
Yeah, that's
We
hard.
detest that man. Okay, so, what other options are available, So you're looking, and it was a learning experience, Okay, so we can look at fingerprints, or has he ever been arrested? Oh, is there any other fingerprint record in the nation that we could use so I can ID him, so I can at least then go to a pathologist and go, yeah, that's him. And that's who I picked up and I delivered to you. Please cut him up.
Yeah. Yeah, wow.
So, yeah, that was interesting, I didn't know people lived full time in a caravan, in a squalid little caravan, in a squalid little caravan park.
And had he natural causes?
Natural causes, yeah.
Yeah, right.
But just, there was this expectation that this will go smoothly. You turn up, this person's dead, someone will identify him, you'll do this. What happens when no one wants to come?
Well, yeah.
What's our processes now? What if we can't get, teeth done? He didn't drive a car. There was no photographic identification. So
yeah, it's a
different world.
It is a different world, and you had many death knocks over your career. 33 years. It's a long career, and back then when you first started, was there much support around you giving and mentoring of how to give a death knock? And did the support get better as your career went on?
Look, it's interesting because in your training they actually used episodes of Adam 12, the old American police series, which was, stories that were provided by real police officers and then scripted for their characters to film. And they actually delivered death notifications. So we were taught how to deliver a death notification, but basically from a fictionalised TV show.
Yeah, right.
And it sticks with you. It's my sad and solemn duty to advise you that. And it's devastating news for some people, particularly when children die or even adult children die, and you're telling a parent, because it goes against the nature of the universe is that the generations ahead of you go first. And some of them are, terrible, where on a Sunday morning you arrive at work and they go, hey, can you go and tell this elderly woman her daughter and son-in-law were run down by a drink driver last night? That's your first job Sunday morning. Okay. And, I remember that one because both my partner and I had been in quite a long time. I think we'd been in about 15, 16 years at that stage, and could see this elderly woman just needed a hug. And I remember making eye contact with my partner, and neither of us had it in us anymore. We were damaged. We could see what this woman needed, and it just wasn't there in us to be able to give it. And you just go, what, this is a shit job, but I am so broken that I don't have what this woman needs right now.
And that's tough.
Yeah, because
really
all
tough.
You could do to remain emotionless, and not clinically cold, but professional. Just go, I know this is what we're going to say, and it was like, do you have a neighbour? Maybe we could go and get you a friend. Do you have a friend we could call? Because as far as we were aware from memory now, I think the daughter was an only child. The son-in-law, they didn't have any grandkids, so this woman's, knew they were going out for a party, walking down the street, run and killed by a drink driver,
Just tragic. And as a highlight, mate, one of the many different death notices that you've given over 33 years, and it's policing. That's what it is. It's a tough,
Yeah, I mean, other ones that, young fellows on trail bikes, no safety gear, always in trouble with the coppers, run around in the middle of a park, comes off the trail bike and is killed on a copper's log. Hits a copper's log.
Yep.
So police go around, tell the family, next thing, police are attacked. It was nothing to do with us. We're just delivering a death message, I was certainly attacked investigating an elderly woman's death because one of the family, big strapping son, slight intellectual disability, and he sees us manhandling grandma who's now passed away. Well, next thing you know, you're fighting with this person, knowing that he's going through trauma and he's got mental health issues and mental development issues. but you can't come and attack the coppers, man. Yeah, I get it, but we didn't want to be here manhandling grandma, but grandma's dead, man. That's part of our job.
Yeah, and that's the shitter side of,
and there are all these things that stay with you, that the more that you talk about it, then you go, oh yeah, I remember this other one. And
And did you, I know that for a lot of police that, that compass changes where everyone's bad unless they're proven good, and that it's black and white. You're either, did that change very quickly for you? Did you?
I think I learned very quickly that people will lie, or they'll tell their version of the truth, and somewhere in between the two, they won't. Maybe they won't intentionally lie, but they might tell their version of their truth, and the two sides, and you've got to listen and just agree on what do they both agree on.
Yeah.
And so that will be the facts. The facts are what they both agree on. I guess I was fortunate I never picked up on everyone's bad.
Yeah.
And that's probably because I felt that natural justice was important, and everyone's got a story. But once I learned that everyone's going to tell you a story, that was different. So then we can go to just the facts, ma'am, like they used in the old Dragnet show, just the facts.
And I know, some of the detectives I've had on that have said, just follow the evidence. The evidence will lead to the truth. You just follow that evidence chain, and yourself, you're probably sitting there going, I know you've done this. You probably some of the stories, and you're like you're hearing the excuse or the you've done this.
Look, and I mean I learnt, I guess, to trust my gut, and that, and it was difficult because early in your career you go, I don't want to be a police officer that just judges someone because the book's got its cover. So, however, there were plenty of times that I got burnt because I didn't trust my gut. And it wasn't until I was in the dog squad, and I was working with a dog who was infallible, and her instincts were never wrong. And I would be dealing with someone going, no, don't judge this person, man, just because they're dressed this way. No. You're thinking wrong, you're stereotyping. And I'd be looking at my dog going, this dog does not trust this person in any way. And then, as a result, though, I'd end up getting belted, and then the dog would come in and save me. So I learnt through working with an animal is trust your gut.
Well, it's a great segue because you move around for the next couple of years after you're sworn in as a police officer, and then in 1995 you moved to the dog squad. And did you always have an interest in dogs? Talk me through the process of, you obviously apply, and then do you go on a course and are you paired with a dog and you got to learn tracking, and talk me through this because you're the first dog handler or police officer that I've had on. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I guess I'd seen the dogs at work, but no, I had family pets growing up. Wasn't really fascinated with dogs at an early age, but I'd seen it, and I knew though that I wanted the jobs that were exciting. I enjoyed hunting humans. I enjoyed catching and arresting naughty people. And a position had popped up in the dog squad, and I've gone, well, you know what, I'm relatively fit, and I'm young, and I'll just give it a shot. And so that's what I did. And originally, my role and another role was to be for firearm and explosive dogs. I've gone, that's cool, I don't care, I want to work with a dog. Didn't know what that work would entail, it'd be boring or exciting. But so I went through the testing, got selected, and then they've re-gazetted that role into a general purpose dog, so a tracking dog. And a lot of people jumped up and down and were complaining about it. But to the credit of the officer in charge and the state coordinator at the time, they've gone, look, man, he applied for an any role, and you just want the glory role, so no, he gets to stay. And it was an interesting squad because you go on to generally a 3-month course. We had one of the hottest summers on record, and we couldn't train the dogs as much each day because it'd take hours for them to cool down. So the course got longer. At that stage, we were just taking whatever donation dogs would come in, and most of us, I think, had gone through a variety of dogs on the course to try and find one. So our course ended up going for either 5 or 6 months. Like, it just kept going because dogs would only last a week or two, weren't getting that, would be gone. So there were 4 of us on course, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 of us on course. And yeah, you do your tracking, and then you'd introduce play work, and then the play would go, a toy would go into an arm, which is then how you transition into biting work. And my dog was not a great tracker, so we had to then put her on food to get her nose to go to the ground, and she was a difficult dog to read, and I was, it didn't come naturally to me. So I had to work really hard to try and get her to track and then me to be able to read her. But the moment that we went and did the first bite at the end of a track, the light bulb went off in her head. And basically it was, so if I track, I get to bite someone. And at that point, the tracking became her thing.
What breed was she?
German Shepherd.
Yeah, right.
And it was unusual to have female. Most of the dogs were male. Originally, she was going to be a breeding dog. So originally, I was only going to be working for some time of the year, and then I'd be off and having to, have the bitch and deal with the puppies and stuff like that. But she was such a good tracking dog and a bitey dog at a stage where we'd kind of gone away from having a lot of aggressive dogs and then recognised that there was still a need. We didn't have like the special weapons dog that, you could send just into a random house. So only a couple of us had dogs that were consistently aggressive enough that you could send them into a dangerous situation like that and they'll do their job. Like most of them are courageous dogs but not aggressive.
And with that, so you graduate the course, and then do you take her home with you? And you care for
24/7.
her?
Yeah,
right.
big cage is delivered to your house, and you've got to position it somewhere. There's an inside and outside area for the dog to live in, but yeah, you've always got to make sure that you're going to be around at some stage. You've got to let them out, feed them, exercise them. So even on my days off, I think I was running 8 to 10k a day with the dog.
Yeah, right.
My dog tracked at a run, not a walk, like most of the dogs. So we were inaccurate because we'd overshoot a corner, but we would run people down because, as opposed to a slow tracking dog, she would run them. So I dropped a lot of weight. I think I dropped like 15 kilos from my course.
Yeah, right.
Because just the nature of that particular dog. And she enjoyed certain things like area searches. You throw someone up a tree or in an industrial building and tell her to go and find them and bark at them and stuff.
Did she get some bites?
She bit a lot of people.
Yeah, right.
And I think, we kind of worked out in the end is that what she was doing is that she was entitled to defend herself and me. And so she would approach the subject and then the ears would flick back because we're often working at night and you didn't have a torch. And she would stop and start. So you weren't really sure if they would just lost the track again. So she would stop and then she'd stand super close to someone. And the moment that they touched her to push her away, then it was on. Yeah, right. And so, I'd caught her in the daytime doing that one time. That's how I knew what might be the behaviour of my dog. So she was a cunning little thing. She wasn't a big dopey dog. She had rat cunning about her. So
so you're attached. So do you you obviously things change. Like now they've got air conditioning for the dogs, and so you would take the van with you'd have the car with the dog, and so are you out patrolling and then get a call dog required? Like how does that work?
My nickname was Any Unit in the squad because you drive around, so you rarely ever go to the office, and you could go and do your final log at any police station. You just had to type it in, send it to the bosses in town. So you start work and your office is your car, and you would just drive around, and you could volunteer for any job. And so there was plenty of jobs where a dog may be needed, or just a police officer was needed. So if a hold-up alarm came in, yep, sure, I'll go. There's a domestic going on. Well, I'll go. Because I can park, next door down, have the dog go off her nut, and there's presence, and I can go up until the crew arrives. A prowler, I'll go. So all these little jobs that, a suspicious car, yeah, I'll go. Like maybe someone will run from the car, maybe it's a stolen car. So, yeah, as a result, the calls would come over any unit that can respond to, and my call sign, Tango 411 VCAR, show me responding. So, one, I was fortunate. I had a dog we had a different relationship. I was male handler, female dog. It was a different sort of relationship than the male-on-male relationships. And she was super protective, and she would go in. She wasn't a big dog, so she wouldn't do a lot of damage, but she knew how to grab and hold and get you on the ground. So I was confident, but she could feel that confidence, and we kind of built on each other. But, yeah, we would just go to any job.
And I know, mate, if you've got an aggressive dog coming at you, I don't care who you are. You can be 6 foot and built like a brick shithouse, mate. If you've got an aggressive dog that's like coming at you and is trained to bite you and take you down, you're generally pretty quickly going to surrender and go. Yep.
I had one job where it was an attempted murder on a off-duty officer and his girlfriend by her ex-partner, and he was like a martial arts professional. He represented the nation.
Oh, wow. Right.
And, he tried to, the charges were attempted murder. He tried to kill these people. And so I've arrived, and I kind of knew the identity of who the suspect was likely to be, and I've seen someone kind of matching that as we've arrived. So he's taken off, and I've got the dog, and we're tracking. And you're 100% right. We were going into a big car park. He's running towards 2 guys who are unloading a truck, and then he's seen my dog's been released. And he's doing this lap to come back towards me to beg me not to let the dog get him. Whereas Ricky, the police dog, has seen him coming at me now, and the eyes have rolled in the head, and she's gone and apprehended him. So, but this was an exceptionally skilled fighter. But this dog, obviously, you could read that this dog was not around to play and wasn't just going to follow and skip along.
So when they're biting, because I had a doggy from the military police on yesterday, and he said that the bite is they bite, and it is do you call the dog off and say, right, Rick, off, or and straight away it's off, or are they still in that?
So how it should roll is that the dog will go for an arm, or if they can't get the arm, they'll grab something. But then at that stage, they should be like a tick, that they'll grab it and hold on. And the weight of them, and then you should be, this is why you need to be fit, is that you need to be going and assisting them to hold the person down. The dog should remain on that subject until it is told by the handler to release, and then it will come back into a guard position with you. And depending on the level of resistance will determine generally if that dog's going to release straight away, where you sometimes see that the handlers will have to use 2 hands to try and lift the dog off. So that if someone fights with the dog, so, I'd had a few people that had given Ricky a kick and stuff like that, but I had built her up that she knew that if she was hit, that don't come back to me, we are in this fight together. And I'd built that up with her over a couple of years so that even if someone was giving her a kicking, she knew that I was coming and she was to hold on. But at that stage, they become angry.
Of course.
And then you've got to try and regain them like a human. They're going to have auditory exclusion and visual tunnel vision. So, if you apply that psychology to them, you'll know, okay, I might have to tell my dog several times. It's only because it's an animal, and if humans can do it and we're supposed to be this intellectually superior creature, then the dog is going to have the same issues.
And did Did Ricky get you a couple of times as well?
No.
So it was never
me.
Yeah.
She did bite a few police officers in her time.
Yeah.
And that was invariably because they would come between the subject and me where I've released her.
Yeah, right.
So she would run past and nip them and keep going because she enjoyed that part of police work.
So, and in that, once she's got the bite and you've apprehended, like, she comes back, she sits, you latch her and go, yep, she's back, she's latched now, and then for those bites, do you reward her with a treat and say, good job? Like, how do you reward them for that, apprehending that suspect?
Yeah, it really depends on the situation. If a couple of other coppers are there, that's great. You can take her away, throw the toy, and that's the reward. But for her, the reward, I think, was actually the bite.
Yeah, right. And so do you, when you're in the dog squad, do you go back and train the new, are you in that part of the development of the capability as well?
So new handlers would be shadowed, mentored for a little bit. Yeah. So when I started, you go out with someone else and you just sort of see how they work, and they'll help bring out your dog. But normally it's more of a case of it'll be ongoing because they're like humans. Like, they'll take several years before they'll get really good. And I was lucky I had a very good sergeant who had a very balanced dog and a confident dog, but not an aggressive dog. And he built his tracking up. So hard surface is hardest, grass is easier. He trained his dog on hard surface. So when I went to grass, it was like a vacuum cleaner, whereas mine was on grass, and the moment you went to hard surface, we really had to work on her getting her nose down because it's not easy to track.
And with that, do they, because it's like, as I say, you're the first dog handler I've had on from the police. Does the dog, like on a hard surface, like you've got a sneaker on, like how does the dog sense that there's, like, how do they track that? Like it's
so if we look at like how strong their nose is, it was 100,000 times, I think, better than a human. So once that you've got them on the freshest human track, that's what they should stay on. And this is where it's difficult, because once you have other people crossing it, you almost need an experienced dog who then can disassociate it's a fresher one, but it's not the one I was on. And there's little things like, if they've been running for a while and it's a hot day, they're going to got the sweat up. Well, that sweat particles are also forming part of the track. So you've got rubber, you've got sweat, you've got hormones being released, so, adrenaline and stuff like that. And so that's all part of that track. So, that's kind of answer.
Yeah, it does. It's intriguing because
it's a bit of everything.
It is,
if there's blood, that's great. Because the dog will just keep following that blood trail. But after a while, the dog will be able to identify that human scent, as opposed to one that crosses over. Even though it could be 10, 15, 20 minutes fresher, the fact is that by then the dog's got that profile. So, I guess it's why, you see it in some of the TV shows and documentaries where they use hound dogs for tracking missing people, and they give it a smell. I can understand that principle, but what I've seen in practice is that once you've started tracking someone for a while, and so I'd always get it, if it's dumped from a stolen car, open the stolen car, let her have a smell in the interior, then take her to a spot near the car where we know that someone's run from, and she'll be on that smell. So she should have had a big dump in the car, and then pick that one smell. That's the one I want.
No, it's fascinating. Like, that's why, like, when, as I say, like, it's a fascinating aspect of policing that is, it's so cool because, as you say, like, the general, if the dogs are out, it's very unlikely, very rare that they get away with the dog not picking up the scent.
And I mean, it's tough in Australia because scent life is much shorter because it's hotter. Moisture is needed for scent. Whereas, you look at the Canadian dogs and European dogs, they can track someone that's, 12, 14, 16 hours old. Because there's much more moisture, so track life is longer.
And is Rick retired, or what happens?
So normally what happens is the dog will hit a retirement age, it will be offered to the handler, so you might retire one and then have a new one. For me, I was to transfer to Mackay as a third dog handler, and my first wife she'd got a job up as a school-based police officer in Mackay, so Mackay needed a dog handler. They thought this is all great, and then about a week before I transferred, the region has gone, sorry, don't have the funding for a third dog, you're now back in general duties. So we looked at options for Ricky, and they've sort of said, look, we could retire her to you. And I'm going, well, this is a dog that'll scale a 9-foot fence. Like, she climbs trees, and she only knows work. She would be a waste. What am I going to do with her?
Yeah.
She'll see me going to work in general duties and going, what's going on?
Yeah, why aren't I going with him? Yeah.
So the sergeant that trained me on my course, he needed a new dog. His was retiring, so Ricky went off to him, and she continued her role.
That would have been tough for you.
Oh, yeah.
You built a strong bond with Ricky, and like
And it was interesting because his work principles, like, he was more of a relaxed person, whereas I was going to every job possible, so the dog was hyped up. And I got to see her about 18 months later, where he'd gone on holidays, and a friend of mine, you took turns looking after the kennels. So if a handler went away and couldn't look after their dog, they would go to the kennels and another dog handler would look after the dog for a weekend or whatever. So my old sergeant in the dog squad says, hey, would you like to see Ricky again? She said, that'd be great. So he'd had Ricky in the car, gets her out, she comes over towards me, and she recognised me and reverted to the personality she had with me, and she turned around to have a go at the handler.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what the hell? I've looked after her for a week now, But she would become super protective of me, and it was that same personality. So you could see that even though we'd been separated for 18 months, she'd reverted to the personality she had with me, whereas with the new handler who had kids, she was like this domesticated dog, walked around, whereas when I'd had her, everyone was fair game. We'd do displays, obedience displays at school, and the whole time she's eyeballing the school kids. Like, if any of them take a run, you're in.
Yeah, right.
So that's where I'd have to go and explain, hey kids, I'm going to do this thing. Just bear in mind that she's a working dog. So just sit there nice and calm. I'll show you what she's going to do. Yes, let's not have any incident here. Yeah, when we were getting sworn in, she actually had a good lunge at the police minister. So because she's in the middle of the oval and there's all these humans staring at us, and so she's going like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then these people are walking closer and closer, and she's eyeballing them and coming straight up to me. There's some video footage somewhere of the then commissioner of the police minister taking a side step, because I had her on the shortest lead, but she was ready. No one's coming near Dad.
Right. And so you then, as you say, after a few years, you post to Mackay.
Yeah.
Mackay is very different to Brisbane,
and
it's a socio-economical very different, and people are, and I mean that in the utmost respect to people that are living up there. I don't mean, that they're, but it is different to Brisbane. And are you back, as you said, you were moving up there to do a third dog, but then you're back in general duties.
Yeah.
Much of the same, you are doing what you were doing here in Brisbane, DVs, murders, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. There's probably fewer murder type stuff up there. So, I mean, it's a sugar area, there's the mines, so it was busy on weekends, all the miners would come into town and get on the terps, and for me though, is the region every 6 months was going, that dog position, man, we'll get it back, in 6 months. So I had 3 lots of 6 months where it was, the position's coming, we need another handler up here. But I just, at that stage, I've gone, you know what, like, this has happened to me, I still need my adrenaline fix. So, I went out and I did a few different things. I've gone, we've got to do foot patrols here. An hour of foot patrol in the CBD, 24/7, doesn't matter. One of the 3 cars has got to be out for an hour at a time walking. So I've gone, well, it's all flat. Why don't we look at bicycle patrols? So, I've gone and done something unusual. I jumped on public radio. I knew the fellow that ran the bike squad in Brisbane. said, man, have we got a manual? What do we need to do? So we raised about $4,500.
Yeah, right.
In about 2 hours on public radio. And we ended up purchasing 4 police bicycles. And then we started doing bicycle patrols. So we would work till 2, 3, 4 in the morning on Thursday, Friday nights. You know, we'd get out, lock someone up. We'd have the van to support us.
Yeah,
and we'd ride back. Yeah, so...
Bit of proactive policing.
Yeah, and... I mean, I guess going back to proactive policing, it was a bit like before I joined the dog squad, there was more time to do that. So I'd worked in like an area of Cooperoo where the boss was very insistent on the elderly women that were burgled, making sure you go back and visit. So it actually, you know, we had the time to do that. Same as like when I first started, we had Pancake Tuesday, where a lot of the older members of the community would cook pancakes and deliver them to the police station on a Tuesday, and you were expected to go and eat, you know, Mavis's bloody pancakes.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, you would literally call back to go and do that type of stuff, whereas none of that kind of exists anymore. You know, you don't have those sorts of things. You might have the occasional community member who, for an event, might bring something in, but you know, you don't have the time to go back and visit those victims of crime, or just go and make sure that they're okay. You know, like it's not.
Well, we're going to talk, and I don't mean to cut you off. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, and how, you know, police is hemorrhaging. You know, numbers are just leaving the job in droves, and so many police stations worldwide now are so understaffed.
Yeah,
as you mentioned, like back then you had, you know, policing when you first joined. It was an honourable thing. And there was a lot of people in the job, and you could do that. As now, you don't have time.
I mean, we didn't even have the numbers. I just think there was an expectation that you were to be part of the community. You know, it was like you should know at 3 a.m. which bakery is going to be open and what car should be driving around. Oh, that's your newspaper delivery car, and so. If you saw something that was unusual, you would know that it was unusual. Whereas now, like, I guess it's harder too, because, you know, community's 24/7.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
know? But there is that lack of skill taught that, you know, you should know who your bakers are. You should know who's delivering newspapers. You should know which shops open at what time. Whereas now it's like too much of it's like relying on an iPad and just getting sent somewhere. You know, like the actual skills of driving and just looking into a car and going, there's something not right.
Yeah.
You know, or a car that should have hit the intersection behind us hasn't. They've braked upon seeing us. Why have they braked? You know, let's go and look at that car. So it's some of those old skills that we were taught that aren't taught now.
Yeah, and if anything, it's actually... that it's lacking, and it's not. There's a lack of that now, and it's the community isn't as, you know, it's not as safe because you don't have that skill that, you know. And as you say too, you said it earlier on the podcast that, you know, the skilled 15, 20, 25 year veteran of the police, they're not there as much anymore because they've moved on, because they've got, you know, they've got they're what's even the job, they hate the job, so they leave, and all that experience and all those skills disappear. And it's hard, and, you know, if you're not taught it as a young police officer, very hard to learn those skills.
And I think going to Mackay, I was fortunate because coming out of the dog squad where I'd been so active every shift. So when I arrived in Mackay, that's just the attitude I kept going. Well, let's do more. Let's get to that call. So there was, you know, again, there were domestics, but and there were violent crimes, but it wasn't as numerous. And there was very much a very pro-police in communities up there. You know, the magistrate was pro-police. The newspapers were either you could be viewed as neutral or it was supportive of police. It wasn't the other way around. So, you know, we tend to have good relationships with newspapers and stuff like that. But it was interesting because there's all these small regional 1 and 2 officer stations around the place. You know, you get sent out to Emerald, to the mines, to protests out there, you know, and So it was a very different sort of policing compared to urban policing. You were known in your community.
Yeah.
You know, like my private car was a very distinctive vehicle because I'd had it designed with my dog in mind, you know, and I wanted a vintage car. So members of the community knew my car. I never had any problems. So,
and in that, you touch on, and I've had other, you know, country police on that. It can also be a negative thing, can't it? Because on your days off, people know who you are. They come to you and go, "Oh, Brennan, you know, we've got these."
Yeah. So I found that probably the people in the country were more respectful of that.
Yeah.
Even the ones you'd locked up. Like, even if they had a bit of a grudge, they would not do something towards you off duty. They'd recognise you, but they'd just stay away. When I later moved back to Brisbane and was residing in the area I patrolled, it was different at that stage. That they now were resentful and they might come up and say something.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And unless, you know, they knew that you were the larger dog in the fight, they were going to come up to have a gobful. So there was this lack of disassociation between you as a police officer and you as a human. Whereas in the country, like I said, like, you know, I wrote a lot of tickets when I was up there. I locked up a lot of people. I was in a super busy team of 8 of us that were all very similar mindsets. So when we were working on a Thursday and Friday night, there were 30 people going through the watch house.
Yeah, right.
You know, whereas, and things were under control, whereas other teams might go on and the town security would sort of go, look, we know which team's on because it's either out of control and you don't see the coppers, or you guys are here and everyone's locked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, but despite that, and my very distinctive car, I could park anywhere, everyone knew it, no one ever touched it, you know. So there was that respect that you're off duty, don't bother. Whereas, yeah, in urban areas, it's very different.
And so you go up to Mackay, and then in 1999 you transfer to Logan.
Yeah.
Very hard area to police,
Yeah.
and I've heard that from a lot of people. Logan, and you're a senior constable here, and then in 2005 you are promoted to sergeant, and you spend the next 14 years of your career here. How hard is that of patrolling Logan?
Yeah, after the third story of, you'll be a dog handler again. No, you won't be. I'm just going to look. No, I'm done. You know, I came up here for one purpose. I'm going to go back to the big smoke, but I don't want to go somewhere that's boring. If I'm having to go that far, I want to go back into the pits of hell.
Literally.
Yeah. And look, at Logan, I'd enjoyed my time in Inala, which was a very sort of rough, busy area. I didn't want to do that. I wanted something new. So this Logan, and then was accelerated progression on the big long list of people to go to senior constable. If you went to Logan, it was the easiest promotion I ever got. Send an email. I'd like to come, and I'm right to be promoted. And they've gone back with an email. Congratulations, be here in 28 days. Easiest promotion I ever got. One of the last I ever got.
Yeah.
So
which we're going to talk about.
We'll talk about later.
Yeah.
So rock up to Logan, and it is. You know, there's the trials of pepper spray. You know, it's violent. There's armed robberies all the time, stolen cars constantly going around, murders everywhere. So it was a very, very different. It was a baptism of fire. And fortunately, though, you know, I've been used to working and being busy, and I took to the job really well. I had a very balanced and experienced sergeant who'd been in the old mobile patrols, which were the troubleshooters for the state. You know, you'd ring up police, and I think it was anywhere, I forget what the motto was, but something like anywhere in 3 minutes. So you should be able to ring the police and a police car would arrive, and there'd be the mobile patrols. They weren't station-based. So I had this sergeant who'd been there. So he was very keen on us working, but he was a very balanced person as well. He knew how to pull the reins back and send his right people out to the right job. So, you rock up there. But the problem was then that just fed the demon, which was your adrenaline dump. And that's what it became, man. Like, I enjoyed that work and I was good at that work. And I'd started being, you know, seen as a leader in that sort of area. So that then I became a senior constable and placed in charge of a police beat at this urban area that had 2 big shopping centres and then some residential, and because of the nature of who I am and my size and then people that were down with me, we would often work one up, but you would have locked up 3 people in the shift, and by the time the next one comes in, goes, hey man, so these 2 I've arrested on this, can you do them? And I'll finish processing this one. So we were very busy. We were viewed positively by the bosses. But, they were in my area, it just happened to be in the heart of this terrible zone. And, you'd rock up to work, there'd be a homicide. So, turn up and it's a young teenage child that's been dragged up a drain and decapitated. So, okay, up the drain I go, make sure he's dead, right, come back out. All right, well, that's part of my job. 12 months later in my area, you've got a father murders his 3 children, and then I'm part of the manhunt. I go in with the entry, I'm the entry team with 3 others. And we go in, then we go and find him, and then we, have to arrest him after seeing, his 3 slaughtered children. And so, there's car chases all the time, so you become addicted to it. But then...
It's like a drug, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is a drug, and to then feel that same rush, you need more and more dangerous stuff. So you'd hear something, well, that's it, we're going, jump in the car, boys, we're off, to the point, though, you were so reliable to turning up and efficient, even if you were by yourself, that a call would come, a man run around smashing cars armed with a samurai sword, and is there any available? Brendan, can you go? Sure. Knowing there's no backup coming.
Yeah.
And you go, this could go really bad, and at this stage, it was starting to... Not that the community was against police, but it was becoming a lot more obvious that the courts weren't going from just the neutral, they're now going into the negative views towards policing and stuff. So if you ended up in a fatal shooting, that it will only be viewed probably as negative at that point.
So why is Logan so bad? Like, what is there not a lot of jobs out there, or why is Logan
It's really interesting because at the big station I worked at, Logan Central, that's where I first started, maybe a quarter of the staff were Logan born and raised. In fact, Woodridge born and raised from single mum. So all of the excuses that I would hear from my defendants later on, these people had suffered and gone the other way, and they were very good police officers. I think it's more the case that it was where your industrial base were. So if you had, menial industry or those sorts of skill sets, the real blue collar workers were all pushed out that way. But it was also cheap housing for newer immigrants, and there was that sort of mixing pot of cultures, and some cultures couldn't speak. There wasn't a common language, so then they formed little diasporas. And I remember, in court one time, one of the defendants saying to the magistrate when they'd gone, why did you do this? And he goes, well, it's Logan. So it was almost like this expectation of, this is how we survive.
Yeah.
This is Logan. So... it's that attitude, I think, that permeates more than anything else. I think it's the attitude that I'm from this area, and this is how I'm expected to behave.
It's sort of like Mount Druitt in New South Wales.
Yeah.
Mount Druitt's the same. It's Blackhead, it's all those areas that are, and Doonside, and all this is what we do, and exactly that.
That's right. There's this expectation that if I am to be taken seriously as a criminal or as a man or whatever they want to self-identify, this is how I'm supposed to be behaving. And there's whole families like that, we're the toughest family in the street. And the whole family behaves like that.
It's hard to break that culture.
Yeah, we had one family, the only person they hadn't arrested was Grandma, who was the matron of the family. It was
Yeah. It's very hard to, and you look at it and, you've seen it over those 33 years that you're in QPS, that some kids it's pure bad luck that they're born into a family
Yeah.
that are criminals, and they are going to follow suit because you are your environment. What the environment you hang around,
Yeah.
you are going to follow. And if you come from a good family, the chances are, well, there's a higher chance that you are.
And
going to be good.
I agree. I think there's a higher chance. Like later on, when I was working out at Ipswich, we'd go and do curfew checks on some of our juvenile offenders, and the other 4 kids in the family are lovely.
It's just one.
It's just one. And you just go, why did you just choose to be this? Why did you choose this behaviour? Whereas, yes, certainly it goes the other way. Like I said, there was a family that preyed on all these other families in the area and would bring their mates in. But that one family made that street a miserable location. Despite it all being housing commission, there was one family. Whereas there was plenty of other housing commission people there that we dealt with who'd lived there for 30 years. They'd raised their families. The kids were all good. These people took pride in their yards. They didn't abuse what the system had given them.
Yeah. And you go to senior constable, then you are promoted to sergeant. And what in that, going to that sergeant rank, like you go back to when you first started, you're the meat and the sandwich between your constables, your senior constables, and then your commission, so your inspectors. And does your role change as a sergeant and that leadership?
Yeah.
Like, how were you as a leader? And
I think I modelled probably the sergeants that I respected. And like I said, the sergeant that I first had at Logan, and even the one in Mackay, were very good leaders. And they'd explained that the role is sometimes that, yes, you have to be like mum or dad. You have to sometimes discipline your kids. But part of your role is to protect the family as well. And if a stupid idea comes down, then you need to provide that balance. And sometimes you need to tell people above you and have some courage and go, no, we are not doing that. But always be able to justify why. And invariably, particularly as I saw later in my career, I'd have 30 years experience speaking to an inspector with 16 years experience, where most of it was off the road, because they didn't like being on the road. I'd had 30 years on the road because I loved being on the road.
Yeah.
But therefore, the experience that I'd had, and I've been in the organisation long enough, can go, no, this is why we've tried that before. This is what was found. This will be the end result. But we could achieve this, So that's what, I think that was part of being that successful sergeant. And like I've sort of said to people, don't try and get promoted where you work as a senior constable, because it's very difficult to be able to be mates one day and the next day you've got to be the sergeant.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still have friends outside of policing, so now I'm outside. I still have friends in the police who only call me Sarge, because that's how they've known me for 10, 15 years to this day, even though I don't hold a rank now. That's how they know me, and that's a sign of respect.
100% it is.
And it was interesting by having that, and I never, ever was insistent on someone referring to me by rank, but I didn't have to be, because my staff who'd worked under me would certainly correct people who would come in and go, "G'day, mate," and they would be taken out by the staff and go, "That is inappropriate.
He's sergeant.
Yeah. You can call him Sarge, and we'll let you know when you can call him Brendan."
Yeah.
Which I normally do, but most of them would always just go, "Hey, Sarge."
And I know that you spoke off air about the, as you were sergeant, you would never expect your guys to do something that you wouldn't do yourself.
Yep.
But then you're getting ridiculed because, Brendan, you're a sergeant. You shouldn't be locking people up. That's not your job. And that would have been hard, because when you join the police, you join to be on the streets and lock criminals up.
Yep.
To then be told, Brendan, you've got to tone it down, mate. How hard was that?
Yeah, it was really difficult, because I always believed I could be promoted by doing a good job. And part of that being a good job is, they even in their management studies, they teach you the difference between a manager and a leader, and an inspirational leader, or a natural, authentic leadership. And part of that was that, if I rock up to a job and there were 8 police standing around and no one was getting locked up and someone needed to, fine, I'll do it. I shouldn't have to do it, but is there, a lack of understanding of the legislation here or uncertainty? Whereas, I might be the last one turning up, and it's certainly rocked up a few times where last one turning up, first one walking away with a body. But that would then bring everyone else back into focus and doing what they should be doing. However, that was viewed negatively by management because, again, well, you're obviously not ready for promotion, Brendan, because you're still doing that. And I'm going, but no, I am ready for management. You keep getting me to relieve at these higher levels all the time. You know I can do the job. But when I'm back in this role, I need to inspire. I never wanted to be that person to go, you go and do this because I don't want to.
And we've all seen them.
Yeah.
I know I have too.
And as a sergeant, it was, well, Sarge, what do you think I should do? And I go, well, hang on, you're the investigator. What do you feel would be just in this instance? Well, maybe this. And unless there was a legislative problem, I wouldn't go and correct their behaviour. I might show them, these are the 4 options that I see available. But you're the investigator. You've got that gut feeling.
Yeah, I was about to say that gut.
You've got the gut. You've spoken with all these people. You tell me what you think is most appropriate. And unless it's unlawful, I will support that because have confidence in yourself. And I'd learned over time that that's part of the role of being a sergeant, is that I had to stop being that first person through the door and build the next level of sergeant, and build those next people. And then sometimes you have to pull them aside, even if they were your favourite kids, and go, look, this is a problem. This is what, I think would resolve this problem. You need to understand that you're now a role model. So you need to, what do you expect from the people behind you? You need to show them that.
Well, I want to talk on you led from the front, and there's, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, you awarded a Bravery Medal. Mate, talk me through this day and then the process of, being put up for your Bravery Medal and what happened on this day.
Yeah, it was one of those shifts where, again, I was the sergeant of a 4-officer station, but the way that I ran the station, you might be 4 in the car, you might be 1 in the car. Well, it was a night where I was 1 in the car.
Always.
And a call came in. There's a fella armed with a knife, and he set fire to his mother's house. And so there was myself, another officer that was sworn in with me. So she was the district supervisor. So she's arrived, I've arrived, and there was one crew from Logan. And we get the briefing, and sure enough, this fella's in this Housing Commission house, a couple of big knives in his hands, screaming at us, if you come in, I'm going to kill you. The house is already burning, so the 2 other coppers are around the back with garden hoses, calling for the fireys to come. They're trying to do that. We speak to some of the neighbours, and they've gone, yeah, he was being really erratic, and he set fire to a bin and all his possessions in the front yard. But then when the neighbours come over, he's pulled a couple of knives, going to stab you, and then ran inside the house. I'm not even sure if at that stage we were aware, but there was a bunch of full jerry cans in the living area where he was. But I remember, he was throwing some sort of knives out, so I'm hiding behind a tree, and my colleague, the DDO, who I got sworn in with, so she's negotiating with him from behind another tree. We're trying to keep him at the front of the house, waiting for the fireys to rock up. And the house is becoming more and more ablaze. And I remember at one stage, Mel's looked at me and gone, Brendan, I think we're going to have to go in. And I've just looked at you going, are you mad? The house is burning. He said he's going to kill us.
Yeah.
Why don't we... And she goes, no, I'm going to negotiate first. I'm just going, oh, great. Okay, well, that's good because we've barely negotiated. Now we're going to go and, just kick a door in with this lunatic. And I mean, I'd already... in my career, wrestled someone who tried to stab her partner in front of me, and we wrestled with a knife, and she did 7 years for attempted murder. So I was already being aware that how close these things can go and go to being bad. So and by this stage I'd been to the 3 dead kids that have been killed by knives and the other kid that had been decapitated and stuff by a knife. So I'm looking at this house, and then all of a sudden he opens the windows and the house erupts in flame.
Yep.
I remember looking at it going, well, I guess we're going now. So I go up to the door, and I'm much a larger person than Mel is, so I am kicking the crap out of this front door, and it is not budging, and I don't understand. Like, I've kicked in a lot of doors. Unbeknownst to us, he'd thrown a sofa against it. So I eventually managed to get the door and the sofa moved enough that we could push it to sort of one side, and then we're looking through into this burning room, and the smoke's down to the halfway point, and I could see him sitting under the smoke on a lounge chair opposite us with these 2 knives looking at us. And at this stage, I've still got my firearm. Mel's pulled out the taser, and she's tasered him from that distance. So he's sort of locked up, dropped the knives. But then they've disappeared and can't see where they are. So I've then gone to go in, not, again, television, not recognising what it meant. To go in meant to stand up one step and onto the floor, which then placed the upper half of my body in thick black smoke and heat. So immediately I've drawn that in and then filled my lungs with that, then realised that's a mistake because now I can't see, can't breathe. So I turned around and did a little vomit type thing outside at the front door. Mel started to move in at that stage with the taser still going, and she gets to him, starts to pull him, but then she's overcome. So then I go in, pull him, the chair's in the way. Again, the heat and the smoke, so I'm starting, I can't see what I'm doing. So I've come back out, we've both drawn breath again and gone in. We've pulled him out, managed to get him past the chairs, down to the front yard, locked him up. Unbeknownst to us, though, the fire crews that were called were quite some distance away, so one's coming, then they were told another crew's going, so then they've returned to the station. The other crew then got dispatched to something else, so then that crew got sent again. However, at that point, they were told that no, it's not needed, so they've gone back. So no firefighters turned up. So the house burns down to the ground, So Mel and I are taken to the hospital with smoke inhalations, and as a result, though, I know I'm terrified of fire. I absolutely hate it. What we weren't, like I said, I'm not sure if we were aware or not, but when the forensic guys went through, the jerry cans with petrol had got to a point where they could have spontaneously combusted.
Yeah. Yep.
And if that had occurred when we were in there, we would have all died.
Yeah.
Right. But the house burnt to the ground. Yeah, so I remember having to call the then wife and sort of going, hey, just for your info, before you see it on the news, I'm fine, but I'm just going off to hospital. Mel and I have just been in an incident, so on and so forth. Didn't really think too much of it, but I knew, looking back, I was going, I was terrified.
Yeah.
Going in to fight him with knives, I know how bad that could go anyway. And how do you go in to disarm him and shoot him? Isolate, contain. That's what we're normally trained to do, but you don't have that option when the house is burning down around him.
That's right.
Okay, fine, we're going in. I'm not letting my little buddy go in without me. She won't let me go in without her. So Mel and I went both in for that. And then 2 weeks later, my poor second wife, she had a bit of a trouble a few weeks. We were finishing work and an armed robbery came in. And it was at a local pharmacy. Now, we were on overtime, my friend and I, and my friend Dan, who I'd worked with, he'd been stabbed multiple times by a mental patient in the past, so a little damaged, but we work really well together. And we're listening to this call, armed robbery in progress. And we're going, look, no one knows. We're not really working. We're on overtime. We'll just listen. And if someone's closer, then we'll just go back and terminate. Because we didn't know what it was. It was just a hold-up alarm, I think, at that stage. Anyway, it turns out the crews are kilometres away, suburbs away. So we are literally the closest. We are probably a kilometre from this place. So I've looked at him and said, well, man, if you want to go, I'll go with you. And he's looked at me and turned the emergency lights on. And I've gone, well, there we go. We're now going to this armed robbery. So we've driven to it, and to get to the pharmacy is a one-way street. However, it's at the far end of the one-way street. So we've gone, well, this is an urgent job. Let's just go against the one-way street. We got our lights going. We haven't used a siren. Well, let's pull in. So sure enough, what we didn't realise is the cockatoo who was there looking for the coppers, looking down that street, and all of a sudden he turns around, there's this police car that's pulling in right behind him at the front of the pharmacy. So the cockatoo wanders off, we find out later. But we've gone in, and because I wore armour, and I'd always worn second chance armour ever since I'd been in the dog squad, because there was no one to back you up. It's just you. And I'd taken plenty of guns off people by this stage and been shot at in my career. So I always wore armour. So Dan has just followed me in, and sure enough, there's a armed robbery in progress, 2 gunmen. As we're coming in, it was really weird because there's still people there who look like the shop's open. But as we're going into the store, one of them, who's armed with a pistol, has come up from behind the counter and he's holding the staff member as a hostage. And they start backing away from us. And it's that tunnel vision. I didn't scan the rest of the room. All it was is the tunnel vision kicked in, auditory exclusion, and I'm advancing on this person, screaming at him to drop it. And I think
your firearm drawn?
Firearm's drawn. It was drawn before I went in. And I think it was such a terrifying sight that this police officer is advancing and screaming that, you know, and I'm pretty sure that I said I was going to kill him if he didn't drop the gun, that he stopped, put it down, and lay down. So Dan's handcuffing him while I'm covering him. And then I remember seeing some movement at the corner of my eye, and then back further in the pharmacy was 2 legs coming into a small alcove. And I thought, that's a bit weird. So going and approached that, and sure enough, it was the second guy with a rifle. And he got to the back of the pharmacy and realised that he couldn't open the back door. Now he's got this rifle with these lunatic police in there, so he's now put it against the wall next to him, but is leaning far away from the rifle as possible. And so the same thing, you know, like I'm having to ring the second wife at that stage and go, hey, I'm fine. You might see this on the news. I'm going to be tied up for quite a few hours. So she was starting to see what living with a police officer was like. One, you run into burning buildings. The next thing, you know, the number of armed robberies I went to in my career, it was the first time that you go into a stick-up that's in progress that actually got legitimate firearms. You know, like, it's been a big 2 weeks.
And for you, we'll get to your being awarded the Bravery Medal in a minute and the ceremony and what that was like. But, mate, what's that like? Because I speak to veterans and, you know, that they say it's a surreal moment when, and some police go their whole careers without having fire come back at them. And the veterans say, you know, when we're going down range, we're return. What is that like, being a police officer and having fire come back at you, and you actually you're risking your life firing? What's that? Is that the first time it happened to you? Is that a surreal moment?
Yeah, because the first time I was actually shot at was, we'd just done an RBT site, and we just packed up. We were driving up the road, and someone stepped out with, like, we believe is a shotgun, and has just let rip at us, and then taken the bolt. And we were quite junior in the job at this stage. I only had like 3 years service. And I remember kept driving for 200 metres and pulled over and just looked at each other and going, we've just been shot at? Like, what the hell? We're just doing RBTs. It's the middle of the night in the middle of suburbia in Brisbane, you know? Like, so, it was that surreal thing. It's like taking firearms off people. Yeah, you're aware. But like I said, I think it was said to you off the interview, is that I now know about myself is that it's fight, not flight. It's the tunnel vision that kicks in, even though you know it's happening and you're trying to slow your breathing down. It's advance, and win. In all those situations, it was exactly like that. You know, even with the fire gun, I don't like fire. You know, like, water's fine, but fire, not so cool.
A lot of people don't, mate. I chose a profession, but
that's it. But it was advance to win. And that was my problem, like, you know, in that fire, stepping up into it. Why? Because that's where I'm my biggest and strongest is to advance things.
Yeah, yeah.
Forgetting that it's, no, get down and crawl.
Yeah.
You know,
we do say that to people where it's, and Mick said it yesterday, he's like, the first thing that came to his mind when he ran into that burning building and saved that lady was the old McDonald's, get down low and
go. Yeah.
You did that.
And like I said to you, like, you learn in policing by failure.
Yeah.
And you've got to fail to learn and become better. And like, if I had that situation again, I now know there's no point standing up.
Yeah.
You go from being your strongest as a human to your weakest at that
right.
point.
And smoke, as I know, like, because being a firefighter, smoke rises first, and then it hits all around, and then eventually it gets down to the ground. But you are best. That's why when we go in, you always see us go in with one knee, and we're down low so that we can attack that. And there's a reason, there's science behind it.
And that's what, like I think I said to you earlier, like, you're only as good as you practice.
Exactly.
You have to practice every fail.
Yeah.
You need to create spiels so that when it's starting to go bad, you can fall back on something.
Correct.
And as coppers, you don't get taught to, so you just receive what the normal public are aware. Now, I'm aware of what it should be doing, but in that moment of fight, it's not there,
And you, as police officers, and we often, the amount of times we have seen it where police are running into a house fire, it happens so often. Like, people don't realise that the police are first on scene, you guys are there, the call comes through, and you will generally be us as firefighters to the job. It's like common because we're in a truck.
Yeah.
You guys you're either in a car or or a ute, so you're going to get there quicker. And most police I've met are not just going to stand there if someone's inside. No. You're going in, right? And without breathing apparatus, you're taking in all that shit that we,
That's right. Like, it's just, I think the successful police tend to be those ones that, want to go in and help. They recognise there's danger, and the longer that you do it, the more that you'll just not even think about not doing it.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, it's got to be done.
That's right.
Like, it's like when the lady tried to stab her partner in front of us. Like, I'd been there before, and he was the domestic violence person. So I'm going, I wonder what this is about. Unfortunately, the radio room didn't tell us that she'd been calling, and she'd said that when the police arrive, I'm going to stab him. They didn't give me that bit. So when we've arrived, I'm assuming he's going to be the person that wanted to belt me. And I'm standing in the door, and he's looking confused. Like, he's got his sandwich, and he's drunk, and he's going like, what are you here for? And she gets up from the dining table, walks in the kitchen, and the first year with me wants to go and follow her. And I've got, no, just wait. This seems weird. And sure enough, hear her going through the sink, and then she comes out with the largest carving knife I've ever seen.
Yeah, right.
And approaches the front door, and at this stage, like, I've got my pistol out, and I'm going, if she steps into the door frame, I'm going to kill her. Because she's coming to kill me. That's my line. And I'm on a balcony, 2 stories up, going, I can't go anywhere but over.
Yeah,
and
you've got
to the ground.
Yeah.
No, there's no more retreat. And I remember the bloke looking at her going like, what are you doing? And then as she came up, she drew the knife back and then went to stab him in the middle of the chest, right on the sternum.
Yeah.
And to his credit, this drunk old bloke dropped the sandwich and caught her arm and stopped the blade against his chest. And at that point, I remember my pistol going away, going, whew, thank God she's not trying to kill me. And then I'm going, oh, what are you doing? She's trying to kill someone else. But by that stage, I was freeing my hands to go in and fight her. And now that the knife was under control, my instinct was to spray her in the face, and then it was just on. And she'd been an old bouncer in King's Cross.
Oh, God.
And so it was like
she could
fighting. Yeah, it was like fighting an elephant. Like, we ended up putting the knife through the chair and bending the blade so she couldn't keep using.
Wow.
And went to the stage where like going to break her fingers to get her to release. So but out of that, she gets 7 years. You get nothing. Yeah. Like, I got a good work email.
Yeah. And that sometimes is the job.
That's the job, you know. And it was like, getting back to the Bravery Award, I don't feel brave.
You're doing your job.
No, I felt terrified. For me, and this is where, like, and I've struggled with that, you know, and my friend Mel, who went in with me, you know, we've talked about it at length, and I was going, yeah, I don't feel like I'm entitled to a bravery award because I was scared. You know, like I didn't want to be there, and I didn't want to be going through the doors. Almost like that imposter syndrome. You know, but
and you know, it's funny you say that, mate, because most people that I speak to, like I spoke to Mick yesterday, he said, what I did? He said, I was petrified. He said, I wasn't, you know, I don't feel brave. I saw that she was screaming out for help and I reacted. That's it. That's all I did. He's like, and this is before he joined the army.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, I was petrified. And what you're saying, and most award winners that get, a gallant award, most of them I've spoken to go, yeah, the last thing I was thinking of was this is going to get me, you know, a bravery award, or it's going to get me the Victoria Cross, or anything like that. It's just reacted on the moment and did the job. And so, what do you put your report in for that? And then how does that process happen for you?
So we just did the statements for court. But then it was recognised by the district that, look, these guys did something that was really, really unusual, which is difficult in an area where there's always violent, dangerous stuff happening. You know, henceforth why you can fight someone for attempted murder and try and disarm them with a knife and you get nothing. But a good work email, you know, it's really difficult for anything like that to stand out. But the district did. Then went to the Commissioner's office and they thought, okay, you know, that's kind of brave. I think, you know, to the point that the Queensland Police Bravery Award is probably deserving at this stage. Because it hit the media, then you've got the Royal Humane Society reviewing it, and then there's recommendations from them. But the final straw was the presiding judge, the defence and the prosecution put in a submission to the Australian government and said, look, this is exceptional. The defendant by this stage has now seen the light and goes, look, I'm so grateful that those coppers came in. At the time, I wanted to die and burn everything down. But I'm so grateful that they placed themselves at risk for me. And so, yeah, that's how the process sort of went. There was a recommendation from the Commissioner, from the Royal Australian Humane Society, and then up through the courts.
Yeah, right.
And so, yeah, subsequently you get this notification that, hey, you've been nominated and granted a Bravery Medal, and there's some post-nominals to go.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, like, you can walk away from policing, particularly the longer you stay, with nothing but a head full of bad memories, you know, and trauma. And you don't do it for medals, but at least at the end of the day, at least at the end of your career, you can look at it and go, I've been recognised for my work. And that's where it's difficult, because there's very few policing medals that just show that you've been an officer that was on the road putting your ass and your financial future at risk, because you can be sued at any time and everyone's going to review. You know, it's either you've long service medals, which can go to everyone, but there's nothing really to show that you've bled and have been hurt. Yeah,
like, you know, you've got your police medal, and then you've got the national medal, and then you obviously your long service medals from the police themselves. But you're right, there's not. You as a general duties police officer, they are the meat that meets the bitumen. Like, you know, like what a general duties police officer, you know, yes, okay, you go into other specialist roles like you did with Dog Squad, or you can go and be a detective, or you can go highway patrol, or you can go and do all the. But the general duties police officer, the shit that you have seen and dealt with, you're right. There's not really a medal, is there?
No.
And at least with this, it shows, from my perspective to you, Brennan, this is just my thought just now, that award that you and Mel received, it's for the whole team effort of what all your colleagues do and some don't get that recognition.
Yeah.
But it's for the whole team.
Yeah.
You wear it for the whole team.
That's correct. And that's where you'll see. So, coppers are, I guess, terrible at it. That they'll sort of put themselves down, going, "Oh, well, it's just this," and you go, "No, this is to show that you've suffered, you've struggled. Yes, there should be something more to show that you've deliberately chosen to remain on the road."
Yeah.
Where it is nothing but dangerous, like you can go, very early in my career, I went to take a burglary report, but it was actually a suicide person wanted suicide by cop. So they're standing on the other side of a door with a knife, and their spouse walks in before the coppers did, and you go, "What are you doing?" Like going to a burglary to take a report could have got me killed.
Yeah.
So it's that awareness that, like I was saying earlier, you can plan to go to your day of policing with a certain intention. I'm going to do certain things, and anything can happen.
Yep.
And even at a routine job, it can have fatal consequences for someone.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we spoke off air, like Chinchilla. Like, look what happened there.
Yeah.
Simple, routine, check of a person for a warrant.
Yeah.
And then they get ambushed. It's you look at that, and it is, this is what I highlight in the podcast to the civilian listener. Being a first responder, and I said it to my police friend over in WA, who's just about to retire after 48 years, that, it's all cool to see, the lights and sirens going.
Yeah.
But when you're in that, and I know it from my perspective being a firefighter, there's that certain element too, and that fear that you might not come back.
Yeah.
Like you're responding, you don't know, like you're getting reports of what, but there's that certain danger that you might not come back, and that it can go from 0 to 100. Like you can be having a coffee, just having your morning coffee, to then you've got an arm hold up going on in a pharmacy where you're now putting your life. And it's not like the movies.
No.
It's not, it's not all glory. There is some shit that goes with it too.
And I mean, there's so often, like while I was at Logan, we had the armed robbery alarms come in. But like one of my friends went to hold up alarm, middle of the day, walks over to it, gets shot. Like these aren't Hollywood things. These things that happen in Queensland,
That's right.
So every alarm you're going to, you've got to assume that it's going to be real. Every burglary you're going to, assume it's going to be a drug-affected person that's committing a burglary because they've got an addiction to fix, and they're not thinking straight. So, every pub brawl that you're going to go to, just assume that the public's not going to see why you're there. They're just going to see you having to do something, and it's probably going to be turned against you.
Yeah, definitely.
So every car that you stop, well, they've stopped because they've committed this offence, but what's the offence behind that offence? Is there something,
Yeah.
Is there a body in the back?
Is
it stolen?
That's right.
We stopped a speeding car one time, and I got the driver out of the car because he had no ID, and he was determined to get back into the car to get something. I'm just going, look, this just doesn't feel right. Again, spidey sense, Go and check the car, and sure enough, here's the shotgun, the sawn-off under the front seat, and there's a big knife in the bench seat. Like, that's what he was going for. You find out later that he's a drug mule. So you've got to be on your best game,
100%.
your A game all the time. And the more that you have those things, the more paranoid you become. And you have those massive adrenaline, drives, and then the dumps. But you get that seesaw effect till eventually, unless you're living on the edge, you're not feeling anything.
And the cortisol that's, the dump that you get, like it's, as you say, it's a drug. It's, give me more. And so do you bring your wife and your family to see you be awarded and do you go to Government House? Or?
Yeah, go to Government House. You're entitled to a couple of guests. So, my second wife came along. You're only entitled just a couple of people because, but that's a great experience. And then for my father, it was interesting because there's a picture of him at Government House when his uncle was awarded the military medal.
Yeah, right.
And he's a baby in my grandma's arms, and here he is with his son at the same Government House receiving a medal. So yeah, I guess there's a little bit of lunacy in the family, but
no, mate, I'd say service well done, and and. How are you travelling mentally at this point? Are you, like, with everything, the traumas that you've seen? Because you're awarded your Bravery Medal. How many years were you into the job at that point?
I want to say, what was that, about 2010? Mm-hmm. So what's that, 19 years? Yeah,
19 years. So you've seen a lot in that, and still more to come. And then is there... And this is where, I said this to Mick yesterday. When you're awarded your Bravery Medal, does there become a bit of jealousy from your colleagues, or is it more, great job, mate, well done?
No, normally it's great job. Mm. Occasionally someone will pop up and go, well, I should have been entitled to something. And you go, you probably should have, man. Mm. 100%.
Yeah.
And that's where it's difficult, and particularly in those busy, violent areas, there's a lot of paperwork for bosses to do just to nominate you.
Yeah.
So they go, oh, do I want the extra work? Oh, is it really that special? But in quieter areas, that's exceptional work. Mm. And so they'll get an award. Whereas, you do work in some of these busier, it's more difficult for those acts to be recognised, because it's like, man, that's everyday shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it exceptional? When you go, well, apparently it's exceptional, but, it's difficult because, it requires people to do additional work, and...
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes the bosses don't want to do that, They're like, oh, my plate's already full.
Yeah, I mean, because they can always go, well, but that person over there did something and they didn't get one, or again, they may have nominated people and who got nothing,
Yeah.
And it's difficult because the service tries to recognise a variety of things, So you've got meritorious service for people who, do more the office-bound stuff. But then, you put people who place their financial future and their life on the line and walk away injured, and they're getting nothing.
Yeah.
Or they'll get a certificate.
Mm. Well, we're going to talk about that, what changes need to happen in a little bit. And so you're awarded your Bravery Medal, and then from 2013 to 2022 you moved to the Ipswich district, and then you do a bit of work, and then this eventually leads on to you studying in counter-terrorism. And what sparked your interest in the counter-terrorism stuff?
Really, it sort of came down to a recognition that from about 2007, I'd been relieving at the next rank up, which is the senior sergeant, district officer. And I got to 2013, I'm still doing it, and I'm going, look, I need a promotion, but I need to stand out. I'm operational. A DDO role would be perfect for me because I'm still on the road. I can still be an effective leader, but take that step back, but be a leader. And I recognised, though, that I needed to stand out from my peers because I was just not getting shortlisted. I'd write the resumes up, and it was just going nowhere. But I was always being asked to do the role. So, I spoke to friends who were levels above, like inspector and, being senior sergeants. They've gone, look at some academic study. You've got your diploma in justice. And I thought, well, I don't want to do leadership and management because everyone gets that. But what's something interesting, and I'm interested in history and, conflict and those type of things. Terrorism's great, there's always interesting stuff blowing up, radicalised people and ideologies. That's interesting. But I'd always believed that, I guess, in policing you often get told, man, no one else wants you. You've got these specialised skills, no other job, and the more, when I did all my professional studies for sergeant and stuff like that, my marks were good, then, you try and help other people with their assignments. They give you an assignment, you read over it, you give them suggestions, and I just found that those people were getting lower and lower marks. And I'm going, I don't understand. Am I getting stupider? So I didn't have faith in myself. And then my friend Mel, who has got her degrees and got the medal with me, she's going, "You've got this. Just apply through university." So I did. I was going, all right, well, I'll apply through Charles Sturt. They've got this terrorism thing. I've got to get letters from my inspector and stuff saying, and yeah, it was quite the opposite. I actually found that I excelled at writing. I got the Dean's Award 2 years for academic excellence. And, I thought, I'll just get a graduate diploma first up. I'll aim for the master's, but I'll just get something in case, it's not me. But I managed to balance my life. I managed to, try and still be, being a good dad and a spouse and working 24/7 and get my studies done. And I was really fortunate, I always, every time I put an assignment in, I thought it was going to fail. It just barely be a pass, and it would come back as a high distinction or something. And eventually, I ended up with the Masters in Counterterrorism and Security Studies. I thought there's opportunities there. I was awarded the postgraduate medal for the university with it. And I've gone, wow, I'm actually smarter than I've been told or I believed. I honestly thought I was just a stupid person. That's why I wasn't getting promoted. And then you keep throwing in resumes for positions and, you either get no feedback or you just don't get shortlisted. I'm going, I don't understand this. What's wrong? I've got all this experience. By this stage, I've got 29, 30 years of service for operational role that I've been relieving in. I've got academic stuff now.
Yeah, you've got things backing you up. You've got a post-nominal.
That's right. I'm just going, I don't know what more I can. I mean, is the last 10 years of my service, am I going to be a sergeant? Am I going to be a sergeant who retires with 32 years service? I think, something like that. Is that a fail? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. And then one time I got feedback and they were going, your language is too simplistic in your resume. And I'm going, I don't understand. Can you give me an example?
Yeah.
No, it was just the general vibe. And you just go, you know what?
That's not feedback.
That's not feedback. And I'm done. And
I want to highlight here too, during this time, you are juggling uni and your son dies of brain cancer age 19. Mate, this would have been the most challenging time of your life. How were you balancing working, uni, and then the loss of your son? Yeah, I remember still doing assignment while I'm sitting in the hospital with him, because you kind of hold in hope. It was 10 weeks. It was 10 weeks from diagnosis to him passing, and it had been tough on my youngest son because when he was born with renal failure. So he had a transplant at 2.5. So we had him on dialysis machines at home as a baby, and I'm going to those jobs with there's dead kids, but I'm at home fighting hard to keep my son alive. And you think, come 18, going on 19, because that 10 weeks was when he turned 19 in that period. You just think, he should be at a good stage in life. I've done my best as, a parent. He's the youngest one. He's becoming an adult. I can focus on my career now and being with my spouse. I want this to work as well, be there for the boys. Yeah, and then all the sacrifices you realise that you've made, not being there on weekends, not taking school holidays because, you need coppers on the road during the school holidays, all that stuff, only having the boys 50% of their life anyway, it was all that sort of stuff that suddenly you realise, I've sacrificed so much and I've tried to be a good person and now this is happening, and you get the sorries, well, why is this happening to me? Why is it happening to him? This is all shit, but you can't control it. But it was that time when the Blue Brotherhood actually works. Yeah, right.
The bosses can't do enough for you. The union's super supportive. Everyone comes together, your friends that you didn't even realise were close friends step up, and they do things to help you or raise money or, cook meals or just ring up and go, hey, you're home, yeah, do you want to have a drink? I'll just come over, man, we'll just sit for a while, And we're very fortunate that, and I've always sort of said that, like, policing will either drive you to God or drive you away. I was driven away with what I've seen. But my son, the other son in the army, with the army and friends of mine who were policing who'd served with him, chose the right military chaplain. Someone who was our personality, who'd been a killer and found God. So, it was the right person to come into our life at that time. And the army, again, was super supportive of my other son. I was worried about him. And so, it was a horrible time, And I remember sitting there getting, like, the death message that it's coming. Instead of this holding out hope that something that's just going to be a miracle. Or there's something. It doesn't happen. You're going to take him home and watch him die.
It's different for you when you've been, you've had to deliver the death message. To then be on the other side, and it's your son, and he's so young, and you're talking about the renal failure and the you've given your best, and you put everything into perspective. When someone close to you is dying, everything, as you say, all the sacrifices means nothing. It's absolutely nothing of and the only thing that you want then is time with that loved one.
And it's tough because like you said, he's 19, and you go, I'm still doing operational police work, going, some of the pieces of shit that I've dealt with as 18 and 19-year-old things, you go, why him? Why not them?
Exactly.
And you get bitter. You get bitter, and you just go, like, I've been a good person. Why me? Why him? Why is his life cut short? There's no grandkids coming from him if he wanted to have grandkids. There's, so he gets robbed. I get robbed. Everyone in the family gets robbed. His schoolmates who are very close to him, they're now dealing with this tragedy in their life that leaves them all affected as well. So you've got all that and the injustice, and then you go, sacrifice so much time. The time's the only thing you want now, and you're not going to get it.
And the thing is, as you know from policing and from life, and I know it because this year my brother and sister-in-law had a stillborn with my niece was carried the whole 9 months, and my sister-in-law had to deliver her, and she'd already passed. And there's no answers. Like there's no answers to, like you want answers. But you don't get them.
No.
And there's things in life that you will never get answers to. My brother and sister-in-law said the same thing. Why was it Florence? What was it? Why? Why us? Like, we're good people. Why have we been dealt this card? And there's no answer.
No. And I think it's often because people get taught this idea that good things come to good people.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden you go, well, we're good people. Or are we not good people? So, there's this expectation that, I've been good, and you can, if you do something naughty, you might get a little smack. But then you just go, what is this about? And, it alters you as a person.
And how are you coping mentally? Like, with everything you've seen, at this point, is that the tipping? Is that the tipping point of
look, at that point it was, I had some really good staff out in Springfield where I was working at that stage, and they would know. I'd go to a job and I'd go, you know what, I'll be the senior person here. Can you deal with these people? Because I cannot deal with that piece of crap over in the corner there. That'll trigger me. And then I'm thinking, you know what? I've got to get off the road now because I'll snap. Someone will do something, you know what? And I feel like I've sacrificed a lot for my career and as a person. You know, I've been patched together a couple of times with post-traumatic stress and I'm functioning well, but, you know, I need something else. And that drove the change to go off the road for day to day into counter-terrorism, where there was less on the road.
Yeah.
There was a little bit, but it was in that specialised field, you know, and that was really good. But then, you know, like the encouragement of my sister is like, you've done your bit.
Yeah.
It's time to try something new in life. And it was the golden handcuffs, man. You know, like I would have retired with 42 years service and hanging out for the superannuation that I'd been, you know, like working hard, the defined benefit, which is, you know, you speak to anyone my vintage who's still got it, it's golden handcuffs. You know what you're going to walk away with to the buck if you can hang on.
Yeah.
But it got to that stage where I'm going, I don't want to hang on.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not enjoying this. I want a new challenge, you know, like.
And well, we'll talk about that now with, you know, after 33 years of distinguished service, you make that decision and that leap to go from the golden handcuffs. This is all you've known from when you were 18 years old. It is a long time to be institutionalised as, you know, this is all I know. You jump. How hard was your transition?
Yeah, it was. The hardest, probably the hardest part was actually pressing send on the application. No, the application for a job externally to the police.
Yeah, right.
I was there. I was working on a Sunday, and I knew it closed at midnight. And I'm looking going, I have never applied for a job outside policing for 33 and a half years. This is terrifying, you know, like, you know, like, well, and then it goes, well, what's worse? They can either say no, or I might get an interview, you know, and so that was the hardest part. The moment I hit it, that send, it was complete relief. It was like, you've taken the step, man. You're ready to leave. And that's what it was. It was like a realisation that policing now no longer held what, you know, I wanted. Yeah. I'd seen how the organisation had sort of gone and the morale, and, you know, part of it was I didn't want to leave because I knew I was one of the few really experienced operational police that was still available for the staff in that area. But at 60, I'd be kicked out anyway. At 59 years and 364 days, you're valued. But come that next day, you're out. Yeah. And I'd rather walk out on my own terms than get kicked out.
And you then, so I think every single veteran, first responder I've spoken to struggle.
Yeah.
But then you find, so you're successful and you take up a role with the Department of Defence as a civilian, and we won't talk about what you're doing in that role, but you've that transition to go from, you know, from how the, you know, QPS do things to now working for the federal government.
Yeah.
Has that been a good transition?
It was difficult because, like, you realised, and it's the old joke that, you know, hey, this is Brendan, he's a copper. And, you know, or you self-identify that, but suddenly when you're not, and I've sort of said to a few friends, that first 6 months, in your head, there's nothing sadder than the next copper. Because, like, I think I got breath tested, like, a month after I left, and pulling into the site going, oh, you know, like, I used to be one of you guys. You go, how sad would that be? Just say nothing. Just give me your license, do the breath test, see you guys, and drive on. Yeah. You know, so you've lost that brotherhood that, you know, when I travel the world, you know, and my partner can still go up to the police and go, hey, I'm a copper from here, come and take a photo. Yeah. Whereas I don't have that connection anymore. So it was that loss of identity. It was like, am I no longer special? Police Remembrance Day, and you get told that, yes, you do something and it's special and it's dangerous and it's this and it's that, it's sacrifice. Have I not that anymore? What am I?
Now I've lost my purpose,
but defence then kind of built up on that, and then you realise, okay, it's just different. I'm now doing, and I sort of say to my policing friends, I don't have an immediate effect on people or the nation today, but my work will have a massive effect on the nation in the end.
Yeah.
Or God forbid, if it's needed.
Yeah, yeah.
So I need to stop looking at today I did this and I did this and finding these little tiny goals and step back and go, okay, this mission is going to take 6 months, 12 months. But if we don't do it, there's a consequence for the nation.
Yeah.
And you think the organisation's enormous, but you realise everyone's working on all these tiny little things, and you go, God, my God, there's no one doing this.
Yeah.
How this is important stuff. So, yeah, that was.
And you've just found purpose in a different way now.
Yes.
It's you're not. It's not in this day to day of you're out on the street, you're hunting criminals. You're still doing that, but from a wider perspective of Australia-wide now. So your purpose is still there.
Yes.
It's just different now. And that would be hard to, change that mindset after 33 and a half years.
Yeah. And coming from a very physical role to maintaining, a physicality, but not in the role. I don't need to jump fences anymore. I don't need to carry a gun every day.
No.
I don't wear body armour every day. So... there was these very tangible things that, every day I'd arrive at work, put on some armour, load a firearm, put it on you there, carry the rifle out to the car, go out and to have real-world effects on people. You can see it. To now, it's office-based stuff, a lot of travel, but I don't need to wear armour and I don't get to carry a gun. And but it's no less valuable. It's just valuable differently.
Yeah. No, that's...
And it's taken, it's taken a while that at 12 months, when I first arrived, I don't understand the organisation, I don't understand the work. The work's new, the organisation doesn't understand the work. And I don't know the culture. To 12 months in going, I suddenly know stuff. I can actually answer that question that this person's asking. And now I know there's new legislation, I know the new policies. I can actually explain what we're doing because we've self-defined it.
That's
and
right.
Now we've got a purpose. We're driving forwards. So, that was interesting. And then almost 12 months to the day that I joined, I got a promotion. And you just go, how is it that I was in an organisation for 18 years and couldn't, get my next stride?
Yeah.
To, I'm here in this organisation for 12 months and they recognise that I possess some skills.
Yeah.
And they promote me.
Yeah, it's a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. And what that shows me is that, and you're not the first police veteran that I've interviewed to say that, where the system is broken and that it's that struggle to go from, a lot, and, a couple of my New South Wales mates say it's to go from senior constable, the leading senior, leading senior constable to then go to sergeant is that next, there seems to be such a lockhold on keeping them at leading constables to then jump to sergeant, and it seems to be that there's a breakdown where, and what you're saying is after 12 months you've been recognised as, actually, no, Brendan, we want to keep him. He's got skills that then we can progress as, the police go, and you saw it. And that was why you eventually, banged your head against that brick wall and went, I'm done, I'm out.
Yeah, I think I'd applied for 18 senior sergeant roles and not once got shortlisted.
And with your career of being so operational, the post-nominal, the degree, all these things that in my eyes are going, yep, tick, tick, operate, yep, okay, so he's been out, yep, tick, 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 tick. But no, it just goes to show you the system. So So you're out of that now, mate, and you've now transitioned, and you're now a civilian again, and your partner is still in the job, and we'll talk about her in a minute. And, mate, looking back now, how much with those 33 and a half years, with all the traumas and everything, how was your family impacted by your service?
Yeah, I often worried for my sons that, they would see would they have problems having relationships because, it's all the hours away and, the cycle of adrenaline dumps, adrenaline crashes, and being antisocial, not being there for events, would they want to be in their own relationships? I mean, mum and dad, I remember one time I was seriously injured in a work-related traffic crash when we got T-boned. My parents had literally just arrived at an Airbnb out in Stanthorpe, like 4 hours away. They'd walking in and getting shown around, and they get a phone call from my bosses going, "You need to get back. Brendan's in hospital. He's been involved in a car crash." And then turning around and driving away back, let alone he's at hospital. There's been a house fire. You've been shot at. All credit to my parents, the trauma that they've been through, and then watching my relationships, build and then fail and build and fail, and not being available for things, Brendan can't come today because he's got this, so they've struggled. I think my dad gave interesting advice. So the second time that I went to see the work psychologists, he's going, well, good luck. And thanks, Dad. That's. I know you're being emotionally supportive here, but maybe a little bit more. No, that's okay. That's just you. I don't know what to say. I know you need some emotional support. And I've been fortunate that realistically, both times that I've been able to get the psychological support at work, I've been able to generally keep working. Particularly the second time when I've gone from Logan, which is super busy, to Ipswich, which was less busy, and that broke my brain. I'm not getting the adrenaline dump daily. It's dangerous, but it's not that dangerous. It's like drinking Pepsi compared to Pepsi Max. This is. Ipswich is the Pepsi Max of the world. It's not good for you, but it's not as dangerous as the other stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So, they've all been there for that. But, both my boys were very supportive of the second time. And then, once the treatments were done, it was, I decided I was going to do the walk Camino de Santiago across Spain.
I want to do that. It's on the list.
Yep. My sister had been on my back for about 10 years with that. So both the boys and my spouse Liz here have been very supportive of that. And they just said, go, we'll be here. We'll be fine. So, it was a 5.5 week walk across Spain and then a little bit of time in Europe.
That would have been beautiful, mate.
Yeah. But again, I needed to challenge myself, people are telling me, you're getting old, man. You need to slow down. I've got, no way. No way. I'm going to go and walk 30K a day for 33 days. I'm walking. You watch me go. And sure enough, it was physically demanding.
Yeah.
But you met so many ex-defence and ex-coppers on the walk. And it's funny because you'd walk into a room and there'd be hundreds of pilgrims there. But you could see each other. And you knew...
Because you're all going through the same thing.
You could see it in their eyes. And so you'd end up sitting at the tables and then each day you'd just have conversations with different ones. Going well, what'd you do?
Yeah.
How long you been in? How long you been out?
Yeah.
And so you'd have these small, intimate conversations with them. But the next day you never see that person again because I'm walking 30K and they're walking 33.
Yeah.
Or they're walking 20. But you have that shared trauma that you can open very quickly to someone else who understands and is not going to be judgmental. And then talk about, the benefits of what we're doing, and seeing So, yeah, I came back to Australia going, oh, my God, I'm currently living in my mum and dad's bare bedroom again. I've got too much stuff. Because I'd learnt to live in a backpack with some money in my pocket, and as long as I had somewhere to sleep and some food to eat, that's all I needed. So, yeah, I literally came back, and all my life is in basically one bedroom going, I got too much stuff.
But isn't it funny because, like, I know I speak to veterans and they say, going to these third world countries, that they're some of the happiest people in the world because here in Australia or the US or Canada or Europe, we overcomplicate it by all materialistic things. More, we've got to have more. And as you're saying, sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And you can see these people, they've got nothing, but they are the happiest people in the world.
Yep.
It's so true.
No, I've seen it. And that's why, like, now you start to collect stuff and you go, oh, my God, have I, like, forgotten the lessons from this thing in life that I've done? But I've certainly, I'll speak about mental health and my experiences. And like I said, I don't think I became a much better police officer, unfortunately, due to the divorces and loss of children and stepkids, walking out of life and, all of these terrible events. But you actually became a better professional as a result. But yeah, I've recommended that walk to a number of people who have done it and come back going, I get it.
Yeah, there's a couple on my list. That's one, and the other one is Kokoda. Those are two that I want to do, and they will happen in the future. And mate, what advice would you give to senior leadership to change the culture in police?
I think they've forgotten the role of the police in society. It can't be everything for everyone. We need to go back to the expectation that people call police to see something happen. And, there's been the expectations on domestic violence are unrealistic in that, you've had government leaders come out and say there'll be no domestic violence in Australia by 2030, and you go, that's impossible.
Yeah.
You cannot program humans like that. So we can always do our job, but it needs to be streamlined, and it can't be the only job that we're doing. There should be these jobs where you are the backbone of the community again, where you've got the time to go and visit your victims of crime, that, there are times when we talk about victimology, but you need to go out and not have a victim get victimised again just over a phone. Like you need sometimes for someone to be there to be talked to.
Yeah, definitely.
And the recognition that those who choose to stay on the road need something different than those who go, I've done 3 or 4 years on the road. I want to go into the other stream of policing.
Yeah.
And then it's really difficult because those who stay on the road, they become self-doubting. There's a limited number of sergeant spots, but those who then often move away from an on-road position have time to get the studies and the additional experiences and build that resume, and then they come back and now they're the supervisors of on-road staff. And it's nothing but demoralising. I think one of the problems is we've got this limit of the number of sergeants, but if the sergeant is the rank that is of self-respect, is there a problem if you've got a station full of sergeants?
I don't think
really. Should it just be a position that this is the position of sergeant who will do this, but you've got a team of sergeants who are going out to do the on-road stuff? Otherwise you've got this career limitation that, people will hit leading senior constable or a senior constable first class or whatever you want to call them now, or a senior constable. Is it fair to expect that they're going to sit on that for 30 years? Because not because they choose to, but because you've got a limited number of positions.
No, I agree with that. I think there's nothing wrong with having sergeants that still want to get out on the road, and and that as you rightly say, that is it fair that a leading senior constable
Yep.
is in that role for 30 years because there's not a position available, and then
Yes.
they get disgruntled and go, well, stuff this, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Because I can't get to because then you're stopping ambition. You are
Yes.
stopping people wanting to progress and move forward, and you are and
I mean, like for many in the community, they know what a constable is. And they know what a sergeant is. Because the sergeant's normally in charge of all those constables.
That's right.
So is there really a problem with the recognition that, you've done your studies, you've now got 15 years service, you're a sergeant. We have sergeants that do this particular role, but the rest of you're all sergeants because you've done your time as a senior constable.
That's right.
You're now qualified. You're qualified, you're now a sergeant. So I think that would be an easier an easier win, particularly if you're just negotiating police budgets anyway. Like, it's just money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you can show that there's justification and keep your workforce so you're not losing all your experience. Because there's lots of people at the moment who just go, you know what, I've been in a long time, I don't like where the service has gone. There's no, the morale's low. The crews just feel like all they do is domestics. There's no, proactive work getting done and breaking up crime just by your general staff. All they're doing is turning up, getting a domestic, and they're doing that till they go home.
There's a lot. I mean, you've been on the road and you can absolutely, with conviction, say, these are the changes. But it's whether the top brass want to listen. And we're just going to take a quick break and we'll come back, and I've got a few final questions, and then, mate, just what a story. And so we'll just take a quick break and we'll come back. So, mate, that's great advice for how the culture and senior leaders can change policing. As we've said, policing has changed since you joined and served for 33 and a half years. In your opinion, has policing gone too woke now around the world, in the sense that it seems that criminals now have rights from when you first joined, that if you broke the law, you were treated with force and treated properly, as now it seems to be, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. As you've mentioned throughout the whole podcast, you can be sued. Why have we gone the way we've gone, and why has policing gone the way it's gone?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it comes to the concept of victimisation. Everyone's only special because they're a victim of something. And therefore, you're not responsible for your behaviour. So that... Therefore, there's always someone to blame, and invariably it's going to be government, it's going to be police, be it from, this concept of colonism, sorry. There's just like the one stream. Again, there should be apologies. I'm special, I'm this. And instead of like you said, criminal accepting, and I do. When I first joined, we had Bogger Road Jail open up here in Queensland. The guys there,
Road, yep.
Super notorious. They were violent men, but they were honest criminals in the fact that they were never going to roll on anyone. They weren't going to tell you more stuff than they had to. But if you copped them fair to rights, they might put on a fight, but it was going to be a plea on the day. And I remember speaking to some of them going, these young crims, they're not like that. They've got no honour. They think they're hard, but they're not. They're always looking for this weird legal way out of something. They're always, criticising the coppers as opposed to standing up as a good villain and saying, yeah, man, I did that. But I'm not going to talk to you about anything else. And I think that's where it is now. It's like this concept that government is bad, the police are bad, so, we're going to over-scrutinise what their work. And then the over-scrutinisation of that, then particularly where complaints still take over 12 months to investigate, put good officers into where's the point? I've arrested them for this, and they're complaining about the paperwork not done, or something that I said, or I lost my cool and called them a piece of whatever. You know, that's where the service is focused on. You've got to have respect for everyone. Well, but hang on, in court, you know, if I get called something, the courts go, well, you should be bigger and look beyond that. But, there's this weird expectation of my behaviour's got to be holier than thou. You're not backing me that in the moment, the heat of the moment, I said something, that wasn't professional. Okay, but let's look at the rest of it. You know, was in the middle of a fight, chase, a 15-minute car chase, and there's this lack of, like it sort of said to you, I was raised with sergeants that go, sometimes you've got to protect your troops, Sometimes you correct them, like, a mum or a dad, and other times, you've got to protect them, and sometimes you need to stand up to the bosses and go, no, that's unreasonable. I'm investigating this complaint, and whilst, it wouldn't be deemed to be best practice, it's understandable based on these three things, So, I think in a lot of ways it's just bled across society and then into policing as well, and going back the other way is that people don't want to do anything. They're fearful of the over-scrutinisation. It's the service or the government department that will be overly scrutinised because people's choices, it's not really their choice.
Well, it's, and two, as you did, as I say, 33 and a half years, there's nothing worse than seeing all your police work that you do the hard, you're investigating, you lock the crim up, then they go into the court system, and then they've got a slap on the wrist, and then they're bailed, and they're back out doing the same thing over and over and over again. I can understand why your patience wears thin, and you go, well, where's the justice? Like, where's the justice for the people, that the victims that they've done this home invasion to, or they've, it just, the court system is a joke. In my opinion, it's a joke. Like, you see how many people are out on bail now that shouldn't be out on bail. They should be locked up, but they're not. That would be hard too, as a police officer. Yeah,
and I think to survive in policing, you've got to be able to just put it aside and go, I did the best that I could do. And I can't, and like I said to people, you can't save everyone.
Yeah, very true.
So once you learn to accept that you can't save everyone, all you can do is present the best case that you have and leave it to the courts. And you may not like what they do, but that is the umpire's decision. And when will that change? Probably when society swings the other way again.
Hopefully it will.
Yeah, because like I said, if you looked at the 90s, the society was probably more conservative and more pro-law enforcement, whereas we're coming out of like a 15-year period where it was quite the other way, where people can be whatever they want to be. How dare anyone offend anyone? You can't sort of say anything that might upset someone's feelings. Ignoring the actual cause or what the effects are. It's my feelings get hurt.
Yeah, and
so I think, again, it's that lack of resilience. Like, as a child from the 70s and 80s, if your feelings got hurt, oh well.
Yeah.
No one cares.
Have a bag of concrete and hard
yeah, that's correct. Whereas now, you'll be dragged over the coals if you speak to someone in a manner they don't like. Or you weren't supportive of their view of the world as they see it. So I think that's where it's difficult, because it becomes demoralising. It's like, it doesn't seem to matter what you do. Seeing the positive results of going, well, these people have been victims. I put this person, they got some custodial sentence, and I wasn't unfairly scrutinised for my actions. And that's really hard to get, because it's quite the opposite. It's like with all the domestic violence investigations, the number of reviews for every one of them, and invariably the work, if there is found they want additional work, it just goes back to those people who are already going back to respond to the next one.
That's right.
So...
Yeah, let's hope there's a shift, and, we can only hope, mate. Like, that the pendulum's gonna. I think it's starting to. I think people are just currently fed up with, how it's gone.
Yeah.
And I think the pendulum will slowly shift, but it's the cogs will turn slow.
Yes.
But we can only hope. And, mate, with so many police officers are leaving the job around the world. Like, I speak, internationally with police from other, agencies around the world that I've had on the podcast, and it is a global problem. It's not just Australia, it's a global problem. In your opinion, what more can be done to retain people like yourself and others who have had, 15, 20, 25, 30 years in the job? What do you think can be done? Can it be extra leave? Like, what is there, like, money incentive? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, look, some of it comes down to, if you're looking at the current generation of younger recruits, you've got people who are less resilient. So it takes a special type of person that wants to go in and deal with horrible things in society when they could be earning money, many other ways and much easier with less risk. So, yeah, like, some of it will be that financial type of thing. You and I have spoken, like, we tend to pay defence, nurses, emergency services workers very average wages at the very beginning. You know what? We're only starting to get good wages when you got 20 years service.
Yeah.
But that's a long time in any career, let alone in modern careers now where people are changing every 4 or 5 years. So you need to look at, you want to get the best, then you need higher incomes early on. And part of it is that processes too, like, we're now in an era where you've got the ability to process large amounts of data, but now you're gathering data for what purpose, And we've got so many minority groups who are quite vocal because of social media that you're trying to listen to all of them and build them into the processes. When I think it's the fundamentals of policing have been forgotten, Peel's principles. If we go back, 170 odd years, we need to go back to that. Back to it's a profession that stays in these limited things. There's alternatives, there's legal aid that's available. If this is for example, a private domestic violence application, why is it coming to the police, who have never been involved in this, to prepare a brief of evidence if one's contested? We don't prepare conveyancing for purchase of houses.
Yeah, that's right.
Why are we doing private applications that don't involve the police for any other purpose except someone's pleading not guilty to a private application? So, we've accepted things like this. And a lot of friends I've spoken with have said, like, there's no fun in policing anymore. It's a dangerous occupation, but there was fun. But the fun came from the apprehension of criminals. But you don't have that opportunity to go out and try and find them or, break their processes or because they're being tied up with these other roles that society's gone, well, there's no one else available, we'll give it to the police to do.
Yeah.
So I think, a lot of people, they're only holding careers for 4 or 5 years, so they don't see it as a lifelong calling. But how can you try and maintain them for longer and get them hooked to it? Well, you need to simplify some processes and pay them more.
Yep.
And, like, my friends in, say, Britain and the US are horrified that they're going, so you did 33 years. Yeah, so what's your police pension like? Oh, I don't get a police pension. But you've done 33 years. Because they're used to pensions of either 15 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
You've done your time. Here's a pension. Go and find something else in life.
That's right.
Whereas we don't.
Well, it's a great point you touch on is, in defence, you work in defence now, and, veterans they get looked after by DVA, and they get, their pension, which absolutely take nothing away, they absolutely deserve. And, they get given a white card or a gold card if they've, hopefully in the future, mate, state by state, we can get a similar system where, we get if we need to go, we understand, as you know and I know, when we join the jobs, that myself as a firefighter, you as a police officer, we understand there's going to be trauma attached.
Yeah.
But to get a little help at the end of your career of, like setting up a white card for, the benefit of a police officer or first responder getting their psych paid for? Because when you leave the job, and if you don't have a job and you're stressing over money, what's the first thing that goes, mate? I can't afford the $250 or $300 to go and see a psych. So I'll let that slide because I've got other important priorities of, like I've got to pay a mortgage. So my own healthcare will disappear.
Yes.
As if we had a white card where it was, state by state, set up by each state that, okay, Brennan, you served 33 years. Here's your white card. That covers you for your, if you need if you need to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, that's covered under this. And if you've been injured and you need, physio or that's covered as well. You're not asking for much, but, hopefully conversations can be had around that this can change into the future because, there's nothing.
The creation of a system for that would be fine, And the next one that goes often is gym memberships.
That's right.
Because you get a bit of financial, because, my friends who are personal trainers say that, like, the moment that budgets need to be tightened in a household, they get the arse.
That's right.
So the two things that actually help hold people together post the jobs, one is your mental health, the other is, physical fitness and the benefits, exercise. They're the first two things that go when people have left and having this massive life change. So they're the two things that, you can see much greater benefit in.
Exactly. And, recently, mate, you look at they've just done the Royal Commission into veteran suicide and, it'd be interesting if they did a first responder Royal Commission because the numbers would be just as high or if not higher than, because, mate, how many friends do you know that have, taken their life because of the job? Like, there's heaps, and it's across the board. It's, and that, would there be, could hopefully something can be done to change it because, it's, to me, it's a very simple fix. That, we can put these things in place to, because at the end of the day, or, I spoke to a mate of mine who's off on permanent sick leave from trauma on the job, and there's no, and I'm like, well, what's the return policy for you? And they're like, oh, nothing. It's just easier for them to keep me on sick. And it's like, that makes no sense. Like, you would think as an organisation, you would want your people back at work, or you would try and find a transition to have them, transition out of the job. It's just, they're just, it's permanently,
and certainly even those that are supplied by the service are supplied in such low numbers. It's difficult to see internal mental health support.
Absolutely.
Because there's so few of them that cover large policing districts. I mean, when you look at the state of Queensland, it's the size of a European country. There's only a few for each region. So,
and do you feel too that you don't want to put your hand up and say, "Hey, I'm struggling," for the fear of there's still that there's been a lot done in the mental health space, but you feel there's still that stigma.
Yeah. So the first time I needed some assistance, it was funny because I'd go to work and I saw my doctor and I said, "Look, I think there's a problem because I'm driving to work thinking I'll be fine if I can just have a drink and then I'll get through the shift." And I said, well, I don't drink. But I'm at that stage going, I just need something to fortify the soul. And the doctor's going, man, you're off. So I've got all this correspondence and, I'm being told by the bosses I can't go on courses because I'm so valuable out there. They go, no, you're like... And when I spoke to the senior sergeant and gave him paperwork, he's gone, it's okay. We won't tell anyone what's happening. We'll just say you need some holidays. And I'm going, well, I don't care. Tell them. Because maybe if they know someone like me who's, a very hands-on operational leader in the area, if they know that I need a break because I've had, some horrible shit and I need mental health stuff. Well, then maybe I'll help someone else who's standing back.
And they might go, oh, shit, actually, I need help too. Like, it's,
Whereas when the second time when I moved out to Ipswich, and the bosses there, the doctor and the psychologist have gone, no, he's super fine. If anything, at work he's great. He is super clinically cold. He's got no emotions, though, when he goes home.
Yeah.
He's fine to work because straight away they'll run around and go, do we need to take his gun off him? Do we need to change?
Yeah.
And it took my bosses, Logan, who knew me, and the psychologist and the doctor to contact them and go, no, he's fine. Working is not a problem. We need him to have some emotion at home.
Yeah. Yep.
That's where he's collapsed. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
At work, he can make the coldest, most clinical decisions possible because there's nothing left.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like I sit there and just think, sometimes that hiding it that's the biggest mistake that, leaders make is, we've got to just just go away, like it's quiet and just no. And your reaction to, with being an operational police officer and, same as any first responder, it's like if you're struggling, you're reacting normally as it's a human emotion to react to traumatic situations. Your body is like, our bodies are trained to go, oh, hang on, that didn't sit right. So to go, we'll just say you're going on holidays. What does that say?
Yeah.
You can only put a Band-Aid on a wound for so long, and then it doesn't, there's times where it doesn't heal because you just keep putting, we'll just add a new Band-Aid. We'll just keep adding another one. Well, you're not getting to, that wound is still festering.
Yeah. And I think that's the benefit of being able to be, a positive worker who still comes out and talks and goes, yeah, man, I had some hard times. These are the strategies I used. This is what I did. This is what I was feeling at the time, but this is the end result.
Yeah.
Like a friend of mine who's an ex-SAS fella, he sort of says he doesn't talk about himself having post-traumatic stress disorder. It's post-traumatic stress growth.
Yeah.
And I've realised...
talk about that too,
I'm kind of the same, is that, instead of me seeing it as this horrible trauma I'm in a corner, it's driving me to do more and do better and try and help people and better myself, and I had this horrible event with my son. Well, what can I take away from that? Dust myself off, stand up, and go, right, well, what more can I do? Who can I speak to? If I find someone who's struggling and go, well, hey, man, have you considered doing this? Because I found this really beneficial.
And that's the thing. It's turning that negative into a positive.
Yeah.
From, okay, it's a shit situation. It sucks. And, losing your son and all the traumas that you faced, yes, they are shit. But it's how you choose to then react and go forward in a positive line, like positive sense, to go, well, because you can only stay in that negative, mindset for so long before it then starts to drain you and many others around you. And exactly right. And that post-traumatic growth is a thing. I always talk about it whenever I give a keynote or talk at a school and go, life is hard. You are going to be dealt some really shit situations. It's how you choose then to react to that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets back to that victim, like everyone's a victim.
Yeah.
Well, no, we've had bad shit happen to us, but I'm not going to be defined by that.
No, that's right.
I'm going to take that and recognise that it's shaped me in some way, but I'm going to do more.
Yeah.
And do better and try and help others.
That's right.
Still, because that's who I was originally. A little kid that recognised that people are different, but your interaction with them can make their day.
Yep.
One way or the other, now...
It doesn't leave you when just because you're not wearing a uniform anymore.
No, that's right.
You're still that same guy that was that little kid that saw that little, that other little kid that was, different, but you included them. that's never going to leave you.
No.
That, you know, and that's exactly, whether you wear the uniform or not, it's still in you now.
Yeah.
But the best thing is that you've got all that experience of those situations to then help people and guide them through, you know, and your resilience that you have has been shaped through all these traumatic events that, you know, where you would probably look at, you know, where others go, oh my God, it's the end of the world. You look at it through all the traumas you've been through and go, actually, look, if we just step you here, do this, do that, you'll come and you'll see that you can move past it too. You can get through it.
That's correct.
Exactly. So, mate, what advice would you give to anyone that is thinking of joining the police, ambulance, fire, being a first responder? What advice would you give to them?
I've always given them the same sort of advice. It's a great career, but it will come with an emotional toll. And you need to know what that toll is so you can make that informed decision. That you will not see the world the same way. You will not see humans the same way. That you will be sacrificing very valuable time that you should be spending with your loved ones. But if you're willing to accept that and know that, yes, you're going to see horrible, horrific moments, but you will have little tiny wins along the way, then it's a career for you. I mean, I remember on a Mother's Day dealing with a druggy mother where we ended up taking the children and telling her exactly what I thought of her, going, you know, like, you are the reason for this. There is no one else to blame. Your life choices have brought you here, and you need to stop looking at yourself as a victim and become a mother to these children that you brought into the room. And 3 or 4 years later, I was at the police beat, and this woman walked through the door and asked for me. And, yeah, here I am. And she goes, I'm not sure if you remember me, but on a Mother's Day several years ago, you told me exactly what you thought of me. And she goes, I just wanted to let you know that your words, you were the first person that was telling me it was my fault. It wasn't something else.
Yeah.
And she goes, and as a result, I sorted my life out. I'm now the manager of a store down the road. I got a job and I got my kids back, and I just wanted to thank you. So out of all of the years that I dealt with people, and when she's saying it to me, I'm going, I can't even remember it.
Yeah.
I'm going, yeah, that definitely sounds like what I would have said to you. You know, like, I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to go, no, you poor thing. You know, you're a victim. No, you're not a victim. Yep. You've had bad stuff happen, but we've all had bad stuff happen.
100%. You've had a choice, and you've made the wrong
That's
choice.
That's correct.
Yep.
You know, and I'm not going to be like your mum and dad who have been holding your hand going, no, it's not your fault, it's all these things. No, it is your fault. And we're taking your kids because of this. So she came out to find me, and it was a win. It was one of the few defined wins that I can see.
Yeah.
Where, you know what, sometimes being told the hurtful truth is the growth that you need.
Mate, 100%. It's, you know, at the end of the day, you can only believe your own bullshit until one day you look in the mirror, and it was for me when I was, 166 kilos.
Yeah.
I looked and went, no, you've got yourself here by poor life decisions, by, and everyone's saying, oh, it's okay, no, you're okay, like, you're not that big, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And then eventually I went, no, I'm a fat fucking slob,
Yeah.
but unless I do something about it, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And, exactly that's what the surgeon said to me. He goes, I'm glad you're seeing me because, and this was when I was 27, he said, because... yeah, you'd have been dead by 34, and I've just had my 33rd birthday, and I've lost 60 kilos. So that's it. Sometimes the hard truth is we've got to have it with ourselves.
What you need, and
what you need.
That's correct, and only you can change you.
Exactly.
You don't have to let the past define you. You can learn from the past, but it's up to you to make those changes.
100%. And mate, what advice would you give to first responders, families supporting loved ones who are in the job that it's not a normal job, and that they're going to go on this journey with the person that is have chosen to be a first responder? What advice can you give to them?
Yeah, I guess from my experience, one of the best ones is that when they're cold and unemotional to you, it's not to you. And particularly if they're in those busy areas, and my family, and particularly my spouse, can recognise it, because I'll be able to now articulate to her going, I'm having a bit of a down, and she knows that it's nothing to do with her. It's nothing to do with what the family's going through. It's a physiological response. I've had a busy few days at work, and I'm about to have this emotional cold collapse. But about 5 or 6 hours after that, where I don't want to be with anyone, just leave me alone, I'll suddenly start going, what are they doing? I wonder where they are now. Oh, and it's that roller coaster.
Yeah.
But as long as, they can understand that, when they come home and they may not want to talk, they just want to go and sit for someone, it's nothing to do with you. It's their body and their brain trying to sort itself out. It's that patience there, and encourage them to, when they want, it's okay to talk about stuff. I don't feel like you have to keep it away from the family, because this is a problem, I think, is that we see horrible things, but then you go to shelter the family. But again, are we building a resilient community by sheltering them from this sort of stuff? It's like when I watch the TV shows and they go, oh, this is a triggering notice or a triggering warning, and you go, okay, are we just enabling people to be triggered by this sort of stuff? It deals with some tough subjects, but some people have had to live that tough subject. You're just going to hear about it or maybe see an image about it. Don't try and tell people they're going to be a victim because they're going to see something triggering. You know what? If it's uncomfortable, the world's uncomfortable. The world is not a nice place.
It's not. And I think that you've just absolutely summed that up, that the world is not... It's not all sunshine and rainbows and, there's glamour and everything's beautiful and bright. It's not.
Yeah.
You've seen how dark the world can get, and there are some evil people in this world, and recent events of Bondi highlight that. That there are people out there that want to inflict violence on people. So the world is not this beautiful place that everyone, that some people with their, that they sit in that realm of, oh, the world's beautiful.
Yeah.
No one's here to hurt me. Unfortunately, reality is, yes, it is. There is both, that there is a dark side to this world as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And, mate, knowing what you know now, actually, no, I'll ask that one in a minute. With everything that you've experienced, all the traumas and everything you've been through, looking back now with 33 years distinguished service, was joining the police still the best decision?
Yes, it was. Look, it was a great career. I enjoyed it. I suffered for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you know what? Like I said, with that one little example, there are little moments in my career where I realised that my actions have had a massive positive effect on other families. So, you know what? I can take pride going, you know what? I feel like I kind of left the world and the policing world in a slightly better place as a result of me being there than not being there.
Yeah, of course.
You know what? Like I said to you, you could see on a daily basis something tangible from doing an action, whereas it's a lot harder to see that now. So, yeah, no, I don't have regrets. Would my life have been different if I'd gone into a defence role?
Absolutely.
Very much so, I feel. But, you can't, I guess it's unhealthy to sort of go, it was all a mistake.
If I did this or if I did that, because you can't think of the what ifs. You can't look back. Hindsight, yes, you could have gone defence and could have, you could have deployed to Afghanistan. You could have done all these things, but I think you've had you've had an interesting, fun, like some of the stories that when you catch up with friends and you go, I remember that story, and the black humour comes out, and you exactly, mate. You've had a career that has spanned 3 decades, and 33 and a half years service is a long time, and mate, you can't look back, you can only look forward. And it's shaped who you are, and you know you're a great person. And mate, knowing what you know now and everything that you've been through, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self back then when you first joined, and would he listen now, looking back?
Oh, you know, like, I think the advice would actually be more on the personal relationships as opposed to the work stuff. The work stuff was the roller coaster of fun, to be honest.
Yep.
You know, like it altered you, or it altered me and changed me. And I think it changed me, you know, in positive ways. But yeah, maybe some of the personal relationship stuff about don't rush into things too early. Would probably be would find that. And would that person listen? Would I listen at 18? Probably I would listen to the relationship stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you found the right, beautiful partner.
Yeah.
Liz. Like you know, like, mate, how's that been for you? Finding her, like, that would have been.
Yeah, that's been a massive supportive part of my life. You know, that I now, you know, understand who I actually am. You know, and I don't need to be in a relationship to be someone, you know, but then having the right person who has been nothing but encouraging, you know, like, yeah, you can do this study, you can change careers, you can leave, you know, you can go on the Santiago, Camino de Santiago, you know, you can do these things, you know, and we'll be here to support you.
Yeah. And now you're supporting her in what?
Yes.
In her aspirations, in her career.
Yeah.
And you now are that, you know, you're out of the job, and you see this, and you see how hard she does it every shift now. And you were like, yeah, I was there. Yeah.
And it's interesting that, you know, Liz and friends who we still have from policing still seek, you know, advice from someone that, although I've left, you know, it's that decades of experience in, you know, not just a quiet little backwater somewhere, or, you know, like, can continue to support the next generation of policing.
Yeah,
so.
And you've left a legacy that people of, like, you know, and we've only touched the surface of, like, we were talking off air, there's so many other instances, but how much can you cram into, you know, nearly 4 hours of a podcast? It's hard, mate. It's you know, and that's the thing. It's you know, you can't highlight the whole 30. You've got to pick certain moments of your career and talk about them. But that's the legacy you've left now, and that's a great legacy to leave, mate. That people still, you're out of the job now, and still come to you for advice.
Yeah.
When you joined as a young fella, mate, if you had said that people were going to come to you, you know, when you're out and still seek your advice, any profession, mate, that's what you hope for.
Yeah.
So, and you've achieved that. So well done. And, mate, you, like, I just look at your career and go, wow. And, like, I've got a couple of final questions. And can we see a book, mate? Do you reckon you've got a book in you?
It's funnily enough, so when was it? When I was at Logan and I was having a bit of time off with the psych stuff. Actually, just after that, I actually sat down and started writing, like, memoirs, because I remember my granddad had written stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I realised that people in my life who had really interesting stories, because they were all very good raconteurs, you know, they could relate these great stories of their life, they were all lost. And I thought, you know, I'd write something, but really, even if it's just for the boys at that stage, so that when they were older and they, you know, I was gone, they could go and look and go, so this is what Dad's career was like. Yeah. You know, so, yeah, you know, a few friends have sort of gone, why don't you? You know, you've done some weird stuff.
And you know, you're a scholar, like you've done, you know, and you've been told that you write really well. Mate, I think it'd be great to, you know, and to span the versatility that you had in the police of, you know, being a doggy, going, you know, all these things. Mate, I think you should, and like that's why I wanted to get you. And when you first said to me, you want to get me on the podcast, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I do, mate. So, mate, I think I really encourage you to write your story. I really, and like we've recorded it, it's now captured forever.
Yeah,
mate, put it into a book. I really think there's not a lot. There's policing books out there, but there's from a first responder perspective, mate. I really think there's so many things that we can take away from your. What we've captured today, that it is so valuable for, new people that are coming into the job and also, people that are, actually, that's how I felt, or how do I get out? How do I, I want to get out.
Yeah.
And Brent, and you've shown, well, this is how I did it. You can do it too. You don't have to have those golden handcuffs, and and at the end of the day, you can transition as well. So, I really think you should. So hopefully, mate, in the near future, I'm hearing you've written a book. So
it might be time to pull out that old USB and start it up again.
Absolutely, mate. And mate, I'll get your opinion on. I've got two final questions, and then I want to bring in. We've touched on Bondi, and I want to get your perspective from your terrorism side of you've studied it. So and then we'll finish with that because I think it's. Valuable to have your opinion on what those tragic events. But in your opinion, mate, what more needs to be done to help first responders, be it with support offered for trauma that first responders see on a day-to-day basis? In your opinion, what more can be done?
I mean, look, there is a lot being done, but I guess the conversations are more at the working level. Like the sergeants and senior sergeants, those that have a direct influence. So it can't be a large strategic message. Like the QPS had our people matter strategy for a long time, and there was always the talk about, well, if our people matter, we don't need a strategy to be able to say that our people matter. But the idea was there, but it's too high up. What you really need is those frontline leaders to be able to go, it's okay, man. Like, if you need help, it's there. But then you've got to have the funding available. You can't have one, a human services officer in a region that is, like I said, the size of a still European country. Like, that's not enough. There's, the QPS, to their credit, and I always encourage this with the staff that I had, is there's like an online check-in health check that, takes 4 or 5 minutes, you complete it, and it'll be analysed generally the next day, and they'll give you a phone call going, hey man, things seem to be going well, but if you need assistance, it's this. And if it was things don't seem to be going well, they would have the options available. And so I would always encourage that with my staff, going every 3 months, just tap in, just see, because you don't sometimes see that slide that, you're not sleeping enough, exercising enough, you're eating crap, you're drinking too much, you've been avoiding your family, social. You don't see that for a while. You just go, I'm tired. And next thing you know, you're in a horrible place. Whereas, I'd always sort of send that out. I'd even put it in hyperlinks and send it out to the team and go, hey guys, just click on this. You don't have to tell me anything, but it's important and this is why. And I would always speak with my staff on, this has been my journey. And these are things that I've done, and this is what has worked for me.
Find what works for you, and I think it is a complicated subject to but I think we had that My Health Matters too, and it's you take it for what it was. You were like, well, do I answer it truthfully, or do I put the hot wash on it and go, oh yeah, I'll answer it. Sort of, and if you're disgruntled, you're gonna absolutely. But I think, there's been great strides in the space.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely more that needs to be, and we've spoken throughout the podcast, and more needs to be done. But let's hope, mate. Let's hope. And mate, what have you learnt from failure? What's the greatest lessons you've learnt from failure?
failure doesn't have to define you. You don't have to stop there and go, I'm a failure. It might be tough. It might be a tough lesson. But like I sort of said to people, you know, I've never really felt like it's all too much and I want to stop. It's like, doesn't matter if it was in tears or if you're, you know, whatever the coping mechanism was at that moment, the collapse was at that moment. It's always been the stand on your 2 feet, dust yourself off. This too will end.
Yeah. Yeah, this too shall pass. And
this too shall pass.
You'll come through that darkness, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Like, this has been a shit experience. I will be able to provide someone else with insight when they go through this.
Yeah, definitely.
So taking it and making it a positive. Yeah.
Great advice. And mate, what are your plans going into the future now with Liz and the family into the future?
Look, you know, like originally it was like 60 and retire, but now it may not be that. But, you know, like I've certainly seen the benefit. I think losing time in COVID and losing a son during COVID and stuff like that, you know what, seizing the opportunity to go and experience more. So, you know, there'll be more travel. Trying to reach out and be, you know, a good dad. You know, like understanding that, you know, I was not particularly a great son in communication for the first few years of my policing career because I was always busy.
You were busy.
Yeah, parents were a long way away. So recognising that, you know, that my other son, if he's not reaching out, it might just be the same sort of thing.
That's
so,
right.
You know what? I'll reach out through other means and things that are comfortable to him. So just being a better spouse, you know, like same sort of thing, like being able to communicate. Like I said, I'm very lucky, you know, like if I start to have these down moments or periods where I'm starting to emotionally shut off, it's okay to go, I'm shutting off. And having a partner that goes, I know what that means.
Yeah, and I support you and I've got you.
It's nothing that I've done.
Yeah.
This is your brain working something out.
That's right. Yeah, no.
You know what?
No, and mate, I think you've earned that right with you and Liz and you know, and your son, and I think you've earned, mate, after 33 and a half years, I think you've earned the right to just have some time and you know, look what the next chapter of your life looks like.
Yeah.
And you've earned it, mate. You've absolutely earned it. So, mate, there's one final question and then I'll get to the Bondi incident. And how do people follow you if they want to get in touch with you? You know, people want to reach out and say, you know, Brendan, how do I transition, or you know, like how do they get in contact with you?
Yep. So I'm on LinkedIn, like, because obviously with my policing career, my name's already out there in Google. So, you know, there's no point being super secretive. So yeah, I'm in LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram. Yep. They're the two things that, and I do a bit of vetting on people who reach out. Yeah, of course. But, you know, if it seems like it's a genuine person, then, yeah, I'll reach back.
Happy to help, definitely. And, mate, it leads me to the final point, and then I'll wrap it up. Recently we saw Bondi, you know, your policing hats on. You know, we spoke off air about the criticism that was faced from the police and, you know, not firing their weapons, and then you've studied, you know, your masters in terrorism. Mate, just give me a quick 5-minute, obviously there was failures and, you know, the criticism that was, I think, is harsh to the police, and just give me a quick 5 of what you think of that whole situation.
Yeah, well, it's really difficult at the moment to even talk about the failures that are there because, again, it can be difficult being from the inside and looking out. Sometimes the information that you get told is information that is not actionable.
That's right.
You know, like it can be from, there is likely to be an attack in this city in the next 6 months. Or, I've got 2 nameless people who are doing something which they're talking about an attack back in Australia. Okay, so what can we action from that? You need more specifics to be able to do anything, to even be able to see if there's any truth in it, because that's part of it is this person actually being truthful, or is this just fear-mongering? So it's really difficult sort of even just to have a look at, say, the failures in it. Realistically, I think what we're seeing with what's coming out is the honest truth of what policing is like, is that we don't have an overabundance of police, and the society wouldn't want an overabundance of police. They don't accept that. What they want is, highly skilled police. But police have to start at a point. So the officer that's lost his eye was in the job for 4 months. It's not unreasonable that that's the type of person that's going to be at that type of incident, because it's likely that their, operational police are going to be younger. If it was a special duty, so it's a duty outside your normal duties, the people who need the money the most, again, are going to be your most junior staff. So you have to look at things like that. Would Australia want police officers carrying rifles on their person in shopping centres just in case they happen to turn into, like, the Bondi shopping centre?
Yeah.
Do Australians want rifles deployed where they're going to be useful, like literally on the officer at Bondi Beach? You can say, well, we'll put them in the car, but yes, it's a long way in that instance to tactically withdraw from where you were, to get back to your service vehicle, to then be able to obtain the rifle when you're under a long arm attack and you've got a pistol. You know what? So there's those type of things if we're looking at that specific attack. So it's, again, what will Australia accept from its law enforcement to try and provide deterrence for those type of things? If you just look at the amount of digital data that's generated every day in Australia via emails and Instagrams and TikToks, and how could you possibly be able to review all of it, and should you be reviewing all of it to look for something? And this is where it's really difficult. It's where, people in communities who think something could be up with someone, that's where that intelligence is important. But then, sometimes you don't get members in those communities who feel comfortable talking with any government law enforcement. So, you miss those opportunities. And then, again, it's too often, it's a lack of information, so that's airspace that's filled by armchair critics.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to look like, why aren't police, why are they holding back and not moving forward, which, as you and I both know, that, and I know it from the interviews that I've done, and I've spoken to veteran mates and I've spoken to police veteran mates as well, that a Glock is only good from 20 metres away. Yeah. And, that the detective that took those shots, that was a 1 in a million shot, that it was, flukish that he was able to get those rounds off. But, as you say, and police aren't trained, and you know this because you're not trained to tactically advance with, and as we were saying off air, the guy has a long arm and he's got a tactical advantage, they both did, and then they've both got an advantage because they're on the high ground and you've got a Glock and you've got to move within 20 metres to take a shot. Yeah. Like, it's pretty easy.
Advance under fire with someone with a long arm when you're in the open.
And you're watching their skills, like you said, his, he was...
Yeah, the manipulation of the bolt, that was someone who definitely had practice, and under fire, under pressure.
Exactly.
Under pressure, they were still, had that capability to move their body in that manner,
It's very easy to criticise.
That's right.
When you're not on the ground.
Yeah. We've had active armed offender training, particularly in Queensland. But again, there's scenarios that generally, they don't involve, blanks being fired back at you. It's you can see in military style training where you're getting, people used to advancing under the sound of gunfire and doing things, trying to build those muscle memories. And, if you hear this is okay, go, crawl. Whereas, with police, it's the other way, is that, that we normally isolate, we contain. If it's active armed offender, fine, advance. But where are you going to advance to across open ground?
That's right.
Well, if you're lucky, you'll bolt from tree to tree, but trying to get situational awareness. And like recently, I was in Canada on Remembrance Day, I was at the service, and they had a 21-gun salute. But I had no idea where the actual artillery was, because the buildings resonated the sound. It was just this deafening. So straight away, you've got a human being who's suddenly being asked to perform a very high level tactical awareness, and you're trying to gain situational awareness when you may not even be able to just listen for a sound, because the sound's going to be reverberating off these high rises around you.
That's right.
So it's going to take time even at that. And then when you're in uniform, yeah, it's great, you're easily distinguished, but you're also easily distinguishable target. And who, if you were going to commit a terror attack where you're trying to maximise terror, if you want to prolong that event to get the most out of your terror attack, who are you going to target? It's going to be your uniform response, who can respond to you.
And, I spoke to a veteran friend of mine who said, there was criticism, why wasn't TRG there? Well, in Sydney, TRG, I won't say where they're located, but they are located, it's about an hour's drive from where Bondi was, and good luck trying to get them, with this offence going.
And also, the authorisation for some of those teams, has to go to a certain level of deputy commissioner in the various police departments. So you need someone who has situational awareness on the ground to be able to get it through the various commands, to go all the way to the person who can authorise their deployment, then have that filtered down to the team then start to deploy.
That's right.
It's not like these teams just that is
sitting
on edge.
It's just not easy going, oh, okay, there's a terrorist incident, bang, away you go.
Yeah.
It's not that at all.
No.
There's policies and procedures as you go back to with the law. You can't just go, oh well, I'm going to arrest you, but when you got the right to remain silent. Well, that's the right, because I haven't got any evidence to charge. You're following the law, and the law states that there's policy that you have to. There's a procedure and a policy, and you have to follow it. And that's why it takes time. And so it's so easy to throw criticism towards police when people don't understand the laws themselves. It's very easy to do that. And I think, mate, we'll wrap it up. And I think that all we can say, and especially you, I know you'll support me on this, all we can say is it was a great job under trying circumstances, and the guys on the ground did a great job on the day to stop more people from losing their life. I think that's all we can say. That's right. They were acting to the best of their ability and in a professional manner, and it was resolved in a timely manner. And you're right. You can't over police every public event, regardless of the communities, because as I was saying with you, in Australia, most of our terror stuff has always related to political matters or religious matters elsewhere in the world, and not in Australia. So any of them, you've got to look at a geopolitical analysis in every major city where something could occur. That's right. And it's very hard to, as you say, and this will be the final point that we touch on, is what is Australia willing to accept? Are we willing to accept that, long arm firearms are now going to be a thing that we see in public, like we see in Europe, where, you're at the Eiffel Tower and you see, M4s, over, is that something that, are we going down that path? Are we, is that going to be accepted here in Australia? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to that, because I can't speak for the whole Australian population, but are we going down that path? We don't know. This is all new. It's all new. Would people on Anzac Day accept uniformed police carrying long arms in the crowd? Exactly. That's a good answer. We don't know. And so there's a lot to come out of this. There will be a lot, and we'll see where this, where it lies in the future, mate. But mate, what a story! We've spoken for just on 4 hours, and wow, like what a story, mate! Just, and as I say, I could have kept talking to you more and more about. It's so hard to compress 33 years into a short period of time to capture. And these are only some of the stories. I hope that you do write your book and some of the other stories come out. But mate, I want to thank you for your service to our country and your state, Queensland. I want to thank you for the work that you do to continually to support first responders. And mate, it's been an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on True Blue and share your story. So, Brendan Haley, BM, thank you so much for coming on True Blue.
Thanks, Adam. It's been great.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. Real talk with those that pledge to keep us safe with grit, sacrifice, and determination. See you next time.